Story of a Revolution. 36th July. Author, Injamul. Student and freelancer Mir Mahfuzur Rahman Mugdo was distributing water and biscuits among the protesting students during the turbulent days of July. On July 18, 2024, he was shot dead during a demonstration in Uttara, Dhaka. Mugdo's death was a heartbreaking incident that shook the entire nation. A video capturing the moment of his death spread across social media, intensifying the movement and turning Mugdo into one of the symbolic faces of the uprising. His last words, "Do you need water? Water," became one of the defining chants of the movement. Imam Hassan Taim, 19, was shot dead by police in the Jatrabari area of Dhaka on July 20, 2024, during the student movement against discrimination. According to eyewitness video footage, police officers fired shots at close range, hitting Taim, while one of his friends tried, but failed, to save him. This brutal killing sparked widespread outrage on social media. In July 2024, the students' peaceful movement demanding reform of the quota system in government jobs quickly turned into a nationwide uprising. This movement was a spontaneous awakening against years of accumulated anger and inequality. During those turbulent days, we lost many young lives, whose sacrifices will never be forgotten. This attempt brings together words and moments to narrate the people's and students' revolution that unfolded through a series of powerful events. He was still alive then, tightly gripping the handle of the rickshaw. A red and green flag was tied around his head. 17-year-old Nafis, who had just passed his SSC exam, dreamed of becoming a pilot. He had enrolled in Banani Bidya School and College for Higher Secondary Studies after achieving a GPA of 5. Yet, driven by a sense of duty to build a better future for his country, he joined the student movement against discrimination. On August 4, 2024, like on other days, Nafis joined the protests at Farmgate via Shaba. Around 1:30 p.m., he called his mother to let her know he was safe, not knowing it would be their last conversation. During the violent attack by police and ruling party thugs on protesting students at Farmgate, Nafis was shot. The moment was witnessed by rickshaw puller Nur Muhammad, who later described what happened. He said that amid the chaos, the police forced him to carry a gunshot victim in his rickshaw. At first, he did not understand what they were asking him to carry, but after being threatened, he lifted a lifeless body onto the footrest of his rickshaw. That body was Nafis. Yet, Nafis was still alive, holding tightly onto the rickshaw's handlebar. According to Nur Muhammad, he tried to take Nafis to a hospital in Farmgate to save his life, but local ruling party leaders blocked his way. He then tried heading toward Kamarbari, but the same police officers who had forced him to carry Nafis reportedly wanted to make sure he didn't survive, even attempting to shoot him again. This incident stands as a horrifying example of state brutality, the tragic death of a young boy and the helplessness of an ordinary rickshaw puller. The rickshaw carrying Nafis' lifeless body became a symbol of the entire movement. His death was not just the shattering of one family's dreams. It became a living testimony to the cruelty inflicted upon Bangladesh's youth. The boy who had taken to the streets with dreams of a better future had to return as a corpse. Nafis' sacrifice was not in vain. It was through the blood of hundreds of martyrs like him that the anti-discrimination student movement achieved its ultimate success. Yet, behind that victory lies the haunting stories of Nafis and countless others whose tragic deaths Bangladesh will remember forever. Nafis' unfulfilled dreams and the memory of the rickshaw puller who carried him on his final journey will live on as a sorrowful chapter in the nation's struggle for justice. The mass killings that began under an autocratic regime in July 2024 reached their tragic climax in August. Day, July 1, 2024. On July 1, 2024, a student assembly was held at the University of Dhaka demanding reform of the quota system in government jobs. Under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement, students and job seekers from Dhaka University and several other educational institutions joined the gathering. Their main demand was the reinstatement of the 2018 circular that had previously abolished the quota system. Centered around this demand, a 3-day continuous program was announced starting from July 1st. The University of Dhaka became the epicenter of the movement. A huge number of students gathered in front of the Dhaka University Central Library. From there, a massive procession marched through the Faculty of Arts building, Shadow, Mall Square, Master Surya Sun Hall, Haji Muhammad Mohsin Hall, and Basunia Gate, finally ending at the Raju Memorial Sculpture near TSC. At the concluding protest assembly, students voiced their demands and expressed their determination. The entire university area resonated with slogans raised under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement, symbolizing the unity and defiance of Bangladesh's youth. Nationwide programs were announced. From the assembly, a declaration was made to boycott all classes and exams in universities and colleges across the country until July 4th. Nahid Islam, the coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, stated, "By July 4th, our demands must be resolved legally and conclusively. Our movement will continue until a final decision is made regarding the quota system." He also emphasized that during the course of the student movement, university and college libraries must remain open, and all residential and academic facilities, including student halls, must be kept accessible. Under no circumstances, he added, should the halls or libraries be closed. Outline of the next programs. As part of the ongoing movement, a mass march was scheduled to begin at 2:30 p.m. on July 2nd from the Central Library of the University of Dhaka. Students from all universities and colleges across the country were called upon to join this program simultaneously. In addition, it was announced that on July 3rd and 4th, students from Jagannath University and the 7 government colleges affiliated with Dhaka University would also gather at the Raju Memorial Sculpture to join and express solidarity with the movement. Background of the movement. Until 2018, 56% of government jobs in Bangladesh were reserved under various quota categories. 30% for freedom fighters, 10% for women, 10% for districts, 5% for ethnic minorities, and 1% for persons with disabilities. Following a massive student movement in 2018, the government issued a circular abolishing the quota system for first- and second-class government jobs. However, the movement reignited recently when, on June 5th, the High Court declared that circular invalid, effectively reinstating the freedom fighter quota. Students condemned the verdict as discriminatory and once again took to the streets. Their demands centered on ensuring a merit-based recruitment process and ending the inequality perpetuated under the quota system. Other demands of the students. Beyond the game, a cultural celebration. Alongside the reinstatement of the 2018 circular abolishing the quota system, the students raised several other key demands, including, if any future decision is taken regarding the quota system, a commission must be formed while upholding the 2018 circular. In accordance with the Constitution, quotas may be considered only for genuinely underprivileged groups. The opportunity to use quota privileges multiple times in recruitment exams must be stopped. If qualified candidates are not found under the quota system, the vacant positions must be filled based on merit. A corruption-free and merit-based bureaucracy must be ensured. The students emphasized that they honor the freedom fighters as the greatest heroes of the nation and support increasing their welfare benefits. However, they stated that the inequality in job recruitment under the name of quotas was unacceptable. Dhaka University student Sarjiz Alam said, "We respect our heroic freedom fighters, but the discrimination caused by the quota system must end. We cannot accept such inequality." The assembly concluded at 1 p.m. Day, July 2nd, 2024. Quota or merit. This slogan echoed through Dhaka Shaba on Tuesday, as the central part of the capital trembled with chants. On the second day of their protest, students once again took to the streets, demanding reform of the quota system in government jobs and the reinstatement of the 2018 circular. Under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement, students and job seekers marched in a procession that brought the busiest area of the capital to a standstill. Starting at 2:45 p.m. from the Dhaka University Central Library, the procession moved through Nilkhet, Science Lab, and Bata Signal intersections, heading toward Shaba. As time passed, the crowd continued to swell, with students from various universities and colleges joining in. The placards in their hands and the slogans on their lips carried a single clear message. They demanded recruitment in government jobs based purely on merit. The air was filled with slogans like, "Down with the quota system, let merit prevail." Against discrimination, direct action. The chants and banners together reflected the growing determination of a generation demanding fairness and equality in Bangladesh's public service system. Around 3:45 p.m., the procession reached Shaba intersection, where the protesters took position on the road. A large number of police officers had already been deployed in the area. The demonstrators blocked the intersection for nearly an hour, leading to severe traffic congestion on the surrounding roads. From the assembly, Nahid Islam, the coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, stated, "This is not just a movement of students and job seekers. It's a matter of the state itself." He distinguished between the freedom fighters and the spirit of the liberation war, explaining, "The spirit of the liberation war is not something hereditary. It is a national ideal. We, the youth, uphold this ideal, and that is why we have built this movement against discrimination." Around 4:45 p.m., the students ended the blockade at Shaba and began marching toward the residence of the vice-chancellor of Dhaka University. There, they demanded that the central library, which had been closed due to the ongoing teachers' strike, be reopened immediately. The protesters declared that their movement would continue until their demands were met. They also announced that on the following day, Wednesday, another mass march would begin from the Dhaka University Central Library. Students from all colleges and universities across the country were urged to join the program simultaneously under the same banner of the anti-discrimination student movement. A group of students from Jahangirnagar University blocked the Dhaka-Richa highway for 20 minutes, demanding the abolition of the quota system in government jobs and merit-based recruitment. The blockade took place in front of the main gate of the university from 4:03 p.m. to 4:23 p.m. on Tuesday, causing a traffic jam stretching nearly 2 kilometers. At the assembly, Mahfuzul Islam, a student from the 47th batch of the Department of Environmental Science, said, "Even after 50 years of independence, we still see that 56% of government jobs are under the quota system. Did we fight the liberation war in 1971 for this discrimination? Did our freedom fighters sacrifice their lives for inequality? We have once again taken to the battlefield to end this injustice. If the government does not accept our demands by July 4th, we will bring the entire country to a standstill." The students also announced plans to block the Dhaka-Richa highway again on Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. They described the quota system as discriminatory, called for its abolition, and blamed it for the rising unemployment in the country. Day, July 3, 2024. The protests by students across various universities in the country against the reinstatement of the quota system gained new momentum. Students from Dhaka, Chittagong, Barisal, and other regions simultaneously took to the streets to express their dissent. Around 2:30 p.m., students gathered in front of the Central Library of Dhaka University under the banner of Anti-Discrimination Student Movement and began their demonstration. Earlier, from around 1:30 p.m., students from different halls joined the protest march. The demonstrators chanted slogans such as, "Awakened, awakened. The students have awakened. Fired up, blood is burning. Quota or merit?" At Chittagong University, students blocked the Chittagong-Kagrakari highway. Organized under the banner Anti-Discrimination Student Movement, Chittagong University, they raised slogans against the quota system. Later, at the request of the administration, they lifted the blockade. Their slogans included, "The spirit of 18, rise again, down with the quota system, let merit prevail." At Barisal University, around 11:30 a.m., students blocked the Barisal-Kwaikata highway. As a form of protest, many students wrapped themselves in white shrouds, symbolizing readiness for sacrifice. The demonstration caused severe traffic congestion, leaving passengers and goods-laden vehicles stranded. Student statements. Russell Ahmed, a fourth-year student of the Department of Philosophy at Chittagong University, said, "We have taken to the streets in a non-violent movement against the quota system. Our only demand is that jobs be based on merit." Sanjudi, a student of the Department of English at Barisal University, said, "We don't want quotas. We demand their immediate abolition. We hope the court will deliver a verdict to abolish the quota system. If not, we will continue our movement." On this day, the university administration expressed a sympathetic stance toward the students' peaceful movement, stating that while the matter falls under state jurisdiction, due respect would be shown to their logical demands. July 4, 2024 Court's decision. The Appellate Division of the Supreme Court did not stay the High Court's verdict that declared the government circular abolishing the freedom fighter quota in government jobs illegal. A six-member bench, headed by Chief Justice Obaidul Hassan, gave this directive after adjourning the hearing of the state's petition. The court also instructed the state to file a regular leave to appeal application seeking permission to appeal. During the hearing, advocate on record MD Zahirul Islam, representing the writ petitioners, sought a one-day adjournment, not today, as senior lawyer Mansoorul Haq Chowdhury was abroad. In response, Attorney General A.M. Amin-ud-Din requested a stay on the High Court's verdict, explaining that the High Court had invalidated the 2018 government circular, which had reformed the quota system. Chief Justice Obaidul Hassan then addressed the Attorney General, saying, "Why are there protests on the streets? Do you think pressure from the movement can change a High Court or Supreme Court verdict?" To this, Attorney General Amin-ud-Din clarified that their appeal had no connection with the ongoing student protests. He stated that the High Court had ruled against a policy decision of the government, and that their petition was purely based on questions of law. It is to be noted that on October 4, 2018, the Ministry of Public Administration issued a circular reforming the existing quota system for direct recruitment in government offices, autonomous or semi-autonomous institutions, and various corporations. According to this circular, recruitment to the 9th grade, formerly first class, and 10th to 13th grade, formerly second class, positions was to be based solely on merit, thereby abolishing the previous quota system. Challenging the legality of this circular, in 2021, Ahadul Islam, a job aspirant and son of a freedom fighter, along with 6 others, filed a writ petition. Following this, on December 6, 2021, the High Court issued a rule, and after the final hearing, on June 5, the court declared the circular invalid. Student protests and new programs. On the same day, under the banner of anti-discrimination student movement, students held a road blockade at Dhaka's Shaba intersection demanding the abolition of the quota system in government jobs. The blockade lasted for about 5.5 hours, from 12:18 p.m. to 6:10 p.m., causing severe traffic congestion throughout the city. Despite the rain, students continued chanting slogans such as quota or merit and spread the word across Bangladesh, bury the quota system. The spokesperson's statement and new announcements before withdrawing the blockade. Nahid Islam, a Dhaka University student and spokesperson of the anti-discrimination student movement, announced their next course of action. He stated that the executive branch of the government still has the authority to issue a new circular abolishing the quota system once again. Nahid added, "We would like to recommend to the Honorable Court to take our statements into consideration. We also want to ask the executive branch, why did they issue such a circular in 2018 that got canceled within just 5 years? That means there was a flaw in the circular itself. The executive branch failed to issue it properly in a legally binding manner. This was nothing but a deception toward the students." According to his announcement, the following programs would be carried out to press for their demands. Friday, nationwide coordination and public outreach, both online and offline, based on their 4-point demands. Saturday, 3 p.m. protest rallies from all universities and colleges. Sunday, class and examination boycott, and a student strike across all universities and colleges. The 4-point demands of the protesters. 1. Reinstatement of the 2018 circular. 2. The circular issued in 2018, which abolished the quota system in government jobs and ensured merit-based recruitment, must be upheld. 3. Abolition of unreasonable quotas and formation of a commission. 4. While maintaining the 2018 circular, a commission should be formed to abolish all unreasonable and discriminatory quotas in government jobs across all grades as quickly as possible. Quotas should be minimized, considering only the underprivileged groups as defined by the Constitution. 5. Prevent multiple use of quota benefits. 6. Quota privileges must not be used multiple times in government job recruitment exams. If no eligible candidates are found under the quota, the vacant positions must be filled based on merit. 7. Ensure a corruption-free bureaucracy. 8. Effective measures must be taken to ensure a corruption-free, impartial, and merit-based administration. Day, July 5, 2024. On the night of July 5, several leaders of the Hall branch of Chhatra League attempted to evict Sarjees Alam, one of the coordinators of the anti-quota movement, from Amar Ikushi Hall at Dhaka University. However, the attempt failed as students immediately protested. By midnight, news of Sarjees being forced out spread, prompting students from Amar Ikushi Hall and other halls to stage demonstrations. To control the situation, the central leadership of Chhatra League intervened, and the accused leaders later apologized to Sarjees. Around 1 a.m., the hall principal arrived and assured Sarjees that he could remain in the hall, which calmed the students. Sarjees stated that he was told the eviction was under instructions from the central leadership, which later proved to be false. The accused admitted that they acted to gain political advantage. The central president of Chhatra League, Saddam Hossain, stated that whether a student stays in a hall is purely a matter for the hall administration, and Chhatra League has no role in such matters. The principal, Istiaq Moeen Syed, described the incident as a misunderstanding and said it had been resolved. He added, "Students had gathered over a simple misunderstanding. I personally went to the scene and resolved the issue. I ensured that Sarjees was returned safely to his hall room." Day, July 6, 2024. On July 6, students announced a nationwide program called the Bangla Blockade. Under this initiative, they declared that from July 7 onward, they would block roads and highways in front of major universities and key cities across the country, including the capital, Dhaka. The students stated that they would not retreat, but were instead preparing for the next phase of the nationwide struggle. Students from Dhaka University, Jagannath University, Titumur College, and other institutions across the country participated in the movement. Protests also spread to major cities such as Chittagong, Tangail, and Sylhet. On the sixth day of the movement, rather than following the usual forms of protests like strikes or blockades, the students introduced an innovative program called the Bangla Blockade. On Saturday afternoon, July 6, 2024, students of Chittagong University blocked the busy CDA Avenue Road from Muradpur to GEC in Chittagong City to demand quota reforms. This protest was organized under the banner of the Anti-Discrimination Student Movement, Chittagong University, and marked the second day of road blockades by students in Chittagong. Around 5 p.m., the students sat on the road, chanting anti-quota slogans and singing protest songs. They also held various anti-quota placards. A large number of police personnel were present at the scene during the blockade. By 6 p.m., the students ended the protest and marched toward the Shalashahar station area. Mohammed Russell Ahmed, a fourth-year student of the Department of Philosophy, stated that unless their demands were met, a class boycott would begin on Sunday, July 7th, for an indefinite period. Additionally, he said that every day at 2:30 p.m., students would gather at the university railway station and then travel by shuttle train to Shalashahar station to carry out a blockade program around 3:30 p.m. Day, July 7th, 2024. On Sunday, July 7th, starting at 3 p.m., the Bangla Blockade was launched as a spontaneous and innovative program by the students, going beyond the usual strikes or road blockades. This new initiative was announced under the banner of the Anti-Discrimination Student Movement and received widespread support across the country. July 6, 2024. On July 6, students announced a nationwide program called the Bangla Blockade. Under this initiative, they declared that from July 7 onward, they would block roads and highways in front of major universities and key cities across the country, including the capital, Dhaka. The students stated that they would not retreat, but were instead preparing for the next phase of the nationwide struggle. Students from Dhaka University, Jagannath University, Titumur College, and other institutions across the country participated in the movement. Protests also spread to major cities such as Chittagong, Tangail, and Sylhet. On the sixth day of the movement, rather than following the usual forms of protests like strikes or blockades, the students introduced an innovative program called the Bangla Blockade. July 7th, 2024 strategy of the program. The coordinators of the movement stated that to engage the general public and avoid the negative experiences often associated with strikes and blockades, they chose to move away from conventional protest program names. Although the name Bengal Blockade was initially proposed, the term Bangla blockade was finalized as it was more appealing and easier to pronounce for the younger generation. Impact across the country, including the capital Dhaka. In Dhaka, students from universities and colleges took to the streets at key points such as Shaba More, Science Lab, Chainkarpal, Nilkhet, and Motijil. The march, which started in front of Dhaka University's Central Library, proceeded past Kalababan and the Vice-Chancellor's square toward Shaba, encountering police barricades. The students broke through the barricades and extended their presence from Shaba to Intercontinental and then to Bangla Motor, effectively blocking major roads including Shaba, Karwan Bazaar, Science Lab, Nilkhet, and Motijil. The Bangla blockade was not limited to the capital. Students in other districts also participated. Jahangirnagar University students blocked the Dhaka Aricha highway. Other key highways, including Dhaka, Chittagong, and Dhaka, Barisal, were blocked. These actions caused near-total disruption of transportation across the country. The students made it clear that they would not return to classrooms until their demands were met. Nahid Islam, coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, expressed strong anger toward the government, stating, "The government is acting irresponsibly by pitting students against the judiciary." In 2018, the Prime Minister said there would be no quota. So why has the quota returned? Why are students being mocked? He further stated that, if necessary, they would implement stricter programs such as strikes to achieve their demands, and called on teachers and guardians to join the movement. Meanwhile, as students took to the streets demanding quota reforms, the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina described the movement as unreasonable during an event. She stated that students should not engage in such protests at the expense of their studies. The protesters maintained the blockade at Shaba until the evening. Around 8 p.m., they lifted the blockade but announced that the program would continue the next day and vacated the streets. July 8, 2024, under the call of the anti-discrimination student movement. On Monday, July 8, 2024, intense protests spread across the country. During the students' Bangla blockade program, the capital Dhaka was virtually paralyzed, and the impact was felt in other major cities as well. On this day, a new committee was formed to organize the movement, and for the second consecutive day, students took to the streets, vocally demanding their rights. From the morning, students blocked key roads in Dhaka to stage their protests. The blockade at least 8 locations, including Shaba, Farmgate, Science Lab, Nilkhet, and Agargan, disrupted the city's functioning and caused severe traffic congestion. To further organize the movement, a 65-member nationwide coordination committee was formed on this day under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement. Among them, 23 were appointed as coordinators and 42 as co-coordinators. Representatives from Dhaka University, Jahangirnagar University, Chittagong University, Shahjalal University of Science and Technology, and other educational institutions were included in this committee. Key coordinators of the movement, Nahid Islam, Sarjiz Alam, and Hasnat Abdullah, led the committee. Hasnat Abdullah stated, "This committee will work to ensure that the quota movement is conducted in a disciplined and successful manner." As per prior announcements, students began gathering in front of Dhaka University's Central Library from 2:30 p.m. and set out in a march at 3:55 p.m. The procession circled various campus roads and took a position at Shaba, completely blocking traffic in and around the area. At the same time, students from Dhaka College and Eden College staged roadblocks at Science Lab intersection, while students from Shuri Bangla Agricultural University protested at Agargan, and another group occupied Chainkarpal intersection, with the disruption reaching as far as Mayor Hanif flyover. In the evening, Nahid Islam, Sarjiz Alam, Hasnat Abdullah, and Asif Mahmood were called by the police for discussions, but upon returning, they told journalists that they would not make any compromise. The wave of the movement was not confined to Dhaka. It spread to major universities across the country. Students at Jahangirnagar University blocked the Dhaka-Richa highway, while protests and roadblocks also took place at Chittagong, Rajshahi, Barisal, Kumala, and Haji Danish Science and Technology University. At Rajshahi University, students expressed their dissent through street plays, poetry, and songs, making their protest uniquely expressive. One of the movement's coordinators, Nahid Islam, stated, "Our movement is spreading at lightning speed." students have spontaneously taken to the streets and carried out programs. We hope that the Prime Minister will stand in Parliament in favor of the students' demands and provide a final resolution on the quota issue. The movement has also sparked discussions in political circles. However, the protesters have clearly emphasized that their program is entirely apolitical, framing it solely as a struggle to secure their rights. Although the blockade at Shaba was lifted by 8 p.m., it was announced that the indefinite student strike, including class and exam boycotts and street actions, will continue until the demands are met. Awami League leader Obaidul Qadir held a closed-door meeting with 4 ministers and other party leaders. He stated that politics has entered the quota movement and alleged that the BNP, opponent of government, has openly involved itself in the protests. Qadir emphasized that no political party can take sides by contempt of court. He argued that the demands and statements of the quota protesters were contrary to the Constitution and the fundamental principles of the state. Highlighting the necessity of the quota system in the current national context, he claimed that a conspiratorial group is trying to exploit the quota reform movement for its own interests. He further noted that recently, in the absence of the quota system, the participation of women and marginalized groups in government recruitment had been disappointing. BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir stated that the students' and teachers' movement is justified and that the BNP supports the protests. However, he emphasized that the BNP is not instigating the movement in any way. He further argued that the quota system contradicts the spirit of the Liberation War, which aimed to establish a merit-based and discrimination-free society. Mirza Fakhrul expressed full support for the student movement, stating that in the 21st century's technology and knowledge-driven global context, there is no alternative to a merit-based state system. He also accused the government of resorting to falsehoods and conspiracies regarding this movement. Day, July 9, 2024. On the evening of July 9, 2024, in front of the Central Library of Dhaka University, Nahid Islam, a coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, held a press conference and stated, "We have a single demand. The government must abolish all unreasonable and discriminatory quotas in every grade of public service. Reduce quotas to a minimum level only for the constitutionally recognized disadvantaged groups, and pass legislation in Parliament to reform the quota system." To achieve this demand, a Bangla blockade program was announced for July 10, Wednesday, to be observed from 10 a.m. to sunset across Dhaka and the entire country. The program would include both road and railway blockades. Nahid Islam urged students to gather at key points in front of their educational institutions and participate in obstruction and sit-in programs, while ensuring that ambulances and media vehicles could move freely. He also mentioned that the central activities of the Bangla blockade would take place at Dhaka University and the Shaba area. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., students will assemble in front of Dhaka University's Central Library, then proceed to Shaba More for the blockade. The program will continue until sunset, he said. Nahid Islam explained that the High Court verdict and the government's silent stance had created the context for this movement. He further emphasized, legal proceedings will continue in court. However, we believe that the executive branch and government can issue a new circular if they choose. Our demand is now directed at the government and the executive. We will not withdraw from the movement until a final decision is made. On behalf of the protesters, a proposal was made to limit the quota in government jobs to a maximum of 5%. Hasnat Abdullah, another coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, clarified, "Our movement is not about completely abolishing quotas, but about the rational reform of the quota system in line with reality. We want to make it clear that we are not opposing the freedom fighters' quota. The valiant freedom fighters are the finest sons and daughters of the nation. We have never questioned any form of rewards or benefits for them. In fact, we would welcome any expansion of opportunities for them. However, we oppose quotas that extend to grandchildren or unrelated beneficiaries." He further explained, "After consulting with key figures in society, legal experts, and analyzing media reports and talk shows, we have concluded that quotas should only apply to persons with disabilities, small ethnic minorities, and children of freedom fighters. All other quotas are unreasonable and discriminatory." Considering students' opinions and various perspectives, the movement proposed that a maximum of 5% quota could be retained. On the same day, students of Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, BUET, one of the country's premier engineering institutions, joined the quota reform movement directly for the first time. They organized a human chain on campus with banners and placards, showing solidarity with the movement. This participation added new momentum and broader visibility to the ongoing campaign. On July 9th, Awami League General Secretary and Road Transport and Bridges Minister Obaidul Quadr commented on the quota reform movement, stating, "We have heard that the quota movement participants have appointed lawyers for the ongoing High Court case and will appear in court in due time. This is a reasonable step, and we appreciate it." He added, "When there are representatives present in court, the court will hear their arguments, the government side, and all perspectives. We hope the Supreme Court's Appellate Division will make a realistic decision. I request everyone to remain patient until then." Regarding BNP's support for the movement among university teachers and staff, Quadr called it a malicious attempt and emphasized vigilance. He instructed party members to ensure that the non-political nature of the movement is preserved and to prevent any efforts by opposition groups to incite nationwide disorder. He stated, "This movement is strictly related to students' and teachers' rights. We must be cautious of any political intervention by BNP or their allies, who might try to exploit it for unrest. Leaders and workers must remain alert across the country, especially in the capital." Quadr further directed Chhatra League to manage the situation carefully. Under no circumstances should provocation occur. Law enforcement has also been instructed by the leadership to act responsibly and avoid instigating any tension. Although the government and the Awami League recognize the students' demands as legitimate, they consider the ongoing movement itself to be unreasonable. In this context, the government has advised the protesting students to present their case in court through legal representation, seeking a resolution on the quota issue via judicial channels. The matter was discussed in a meeting with Law Minister Anisul Haq, Education Minister Mahibul Hassan Chowdhury, State Minister for Information and Broadcasting Muhammad A. Rafat, and State Minister for Education Shamsunahar. Education Minister Mahibul Hassan Chowdhury stated, "The issue is currently under judicial review, and we will not comment on it at this moment. That is a matter for the court. Since the matter is south pending in court, our position is to refrain from any comment." The meeting also expressed concerns that politics might infiltrate the anti-quota student movement, with the BNP and other opposition parties potentially exploiting it to create instability. Court proceedings and legal aspects. On July 9, 2024, two students of Dhaka University filed an appeal in the Appellate Division seeking a stay on the High Court verdict regarding the reinstatement of quotas. In response, Law Minister Anisul Haq emphasized that the quota issue is now under the consideration of the Supreme Court, and it cannot be resolved through street protests. He also hinted that there could be a conspiracy by anti-liberation forces behind the movement. Nationwide spread of protests. The wave of protests was not limited to Dhaka. It spread to other regions as well. Students staged demonstrations and roadblocks in districts including Barisal, Habiganj, Rajshahi, and Chittagong. At Jangirnagar University, students blocked the Dhaka Aricha Highway in Savar to protest. Students at Rajshahi College obstructed the road in front of the college's main gate. Chittagong University students blocked railway tracks at the 16 Shohor railway station to show solidarity with the demands. These coordinated protests demonstrated the nationwide scale and intensity of the anti-quota movement, highlighting students' determination to pursue their demands until resolution. July 10, 2024 Supreme Court Order on Quota in Government Jobs. Date: July 9, 2024. On this day, the Appellate Division, led by Chief Justice Obaidul Hassan and comprising 5 members, issued an order directing all parties to maintain the status quo for 4 weeks regarding the quota system in government job recruitment. The court included certain observations in the order and scheduled the next hearing for August 7, 2024. In its observations, the Appellate Division advised, all protesting students are instructed to return to their respective educational institutions and focus on their academic activities. The court also expressed the hope that vice-chancellors of all universities and heads of other educational institutions would ensure a proper environment for students to resume their studies. Following the order, Attorney General A.M. Aminuddin clarified that the stay order means status quo will be maintained. In practical terms, this implies that recruitment notifications issued based on the 2018 circular, which had abolished quotas, will remain without quotas until further court directives. Nationwide Bangla blockade. On the day of Supreme Court order, on the very day of the court's order, students under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement carried out their previously announced Bangla blockade program. Their one-point demand was the rational reform of quotas in all grades of government jobs, reducing the quota to a maximum of 5% and passing legislation in Parliament. From morning to evening, students and job aspirants blocked roads, highways, and railways across the country to press their demand. The epicenter of the blockade was Shaba in the capital, Dhaka. From around 11:15 a.m., key locations including Shaba, Karwan Bazaar, Farmgate, Bijoy Sarani, a Gargan science lab, and at least 18 other major points in the city were blocked. This effectively isolated Dhaka from the rest of the country. Public transportation was suspended, causing severe inconvenience to ordinary commuters, many of whom had to walk to their destinations. Emergency services such as ambulances were exempted from the blockade. The blockade was not limited to Dhaka. Students from at least 24 universities and colleges carried out similar road-blocking programs on major highways connecting Dhaka to Chattogram, Aricha, Khulna, Rajshahi, and Mymensingh. Additionally, railway tracks in Dhaka, Chattogram, and Mymensingh were blocked, disrupting rail communication with Dhaka for nearly 6 hours and causing significant disruptions to train schedules nationwide. Statement by one of the coordinators, Sarjiz Alam at the Shaba gathering. Sarjiz Alam, one of the coordinators of the movement, stated, "Our demand is not from the court, but directly to the executive branch. The court is dealing with the 2018 circular. Any decision regarding the circular may come from the judiciary. However, our one-point demand can only be fulfilled by the executive branch or the government." After the conclusion of the program, the protesters announced that the Bangla blockade would be carried out again nationwide the following day. Counter-protests on the same day, pro-Muqtajada groups, including the Muqtajada Sangsad Suntan Command and other organizations, held a sit-in at Shaba in front of the National Museum, demanding the retention of the freedom fighter quota in response to the quota reform movement. Around 11:30 a.m., they marched through the area, chanting slogans. Day, July 11, 2024. At the start of the day, a stern message came from the government. At a press conference held at the Secretariat, Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan stated that the protesting students were crossing the limits. He said, "The students are crossing the limit." Referring to the abolition of the quota system by the Prime Minister in 2018, the Home Minister noted that following the court's ruling, the movement has no further justification. He questioned, if there is no verdict, then why this movement? The minister made it clear that if the public faces hardship or if there is any arson or property damage, the police will take action according to the law. On the same day, the Dhaka Metropolitan Police, DMP, held a separate press conference. Khankar Mahiduddin, DMP's additional police commissioner, crime and ops, stated that following the appellate division stay order, there is no justification for blocking roads and causing public inconvenience. Expressing empathy for the protesters, he also emphasized, "We are obliged to remain respectful towards the country's highest court." Referring to the upcoming HSC exams, Rath Yatra, and Ashura, he urged students to vacate the streets and warned that failure to comply with the directives would be treated as an offense under existing law. Student resistance and nationwide clashes. Despite the government's stern warning, the students did not vacate the streets. Instead, the protests intensified across the country. The most significant incident occurred in Kumala. In the afternoon, when Kumala University students attempted to block the Dhaka, Chittagong highway, clashes erupted with the police. A verbal confrontation quickly escalated into a chase and counter-chase situation. The police used lathi charge, tear gas, and blank gunfire to disperse the protesters, resulting in over 50 students being injured. This marked the first major clash between students and police during the 2024 quota reform movement. News of the Kumala incident spread rapidly nationwide, especially in Dhaka. Students from Dhaka University, Jagannath University, and Dhaka College organized separate marches, breaking through police barricades and heading toward Shaba. Protesters blocked key roads from Intercontinental to Banglamotor. Meanwhile, in front of the Raju sculpture at Dhaka University, Student League activists also took position. That day, then influential Minister Obaidul Qadir warned the protesters, "If you attempt to create instability, the government will be compelled to take action according to the law." After maintaining the Shaba blockade throughout the day and night, Student Movement Coordinator Asif Mahmood announced the next day's nationwide Bangla blockade program, stating, "On every road and every railway line, students will continue the Bangla blockade program." With this announcement, the students vacated the streets for the day but left a clear message of a larger movement to come. July 12, 2024, intensifying student protests amid police crackdown despite police gunfire, tear gas, and lathi charges. The July movement only grew fiercer, drawing increasing crowds and expanding to new areas. On Friday, July 12, 2024, at around 5 p.m., students demanding quota reform gathered at Shaba, defying administrative warnings. As in previous days, they staged a blockade at Shaba More. The day followed nationwide protests and assemblies reacting to attacks on the Bangla blockade program in various regions the previous day. Students of Rajshahi University blocked both roads and railway lines, while Jahangirnagar University students held torchlight processions in solidarity. Former Law Minister Anisul Haq claimed, "Anti-independence sinister forces are conspiring behind the students' movement." Meanwhile, former DMP Commissioner Habibur Rahman warned, "Any action that disrupts law and order will not be tolerated." Despite these stern warnings, the students remained undeterred. Following this, plans were announced for online and offline representative meetings across all universities and districts on Saturday. Students indicated that the next round of programs and announcements would follow after Saturday's meetings, signaling the continuity and escalation of the movement. July 13, 2024, police file case against unnamed protesters. Government signals firm stand on this day. The Dhaka Metropolitan Police, DMP, filed a case at Shaba Police Station against an unspecified number of protesters involved in the ongoing student movement. According to the case statement, on July 11th, the protesters broke through police barricades, assaulted on-duty officers, and damaged police APCs and water cannons, causing an estimated loss of approximately 5 lakh taka. Following the filing of this case, indications of a tough government stance emerged. In a briefing, former DB Chief Harun or Rashid stated that law enforcement might take strict measures if necessary. Meanwhile, Awami League General Secretary Obaidul Qadir reiterated his firm support for the quota system, asserting that, given the country's socio-economic conditions, it remains a fully justified measure. In addition, separate briefings were held by the Chhatra League, signaling a coordinated response against the protesters and emphasizing the party's stance in favor of the quota system. Student movement holds press conference in response to police case in the afternoon. In reaction to the government's move, the anti-discrimination student movement held a press conference. They described the police case as a conspiracy to divert the movement. At the conference, one of the movement's coordinators, Nahid Islam, questioned, "Why was an anonymous case filed? We demand accountability from the police. If a case must be filed, it should be in our names." He warned, "The government is preparing to suppress our movement. This will backfire on them. If anything happens, the responsibility lies solely with the government." The protesters demanded that this false case be withdrawn within 24 hours. During the same press conference, the movement announced their next program. On Sunday, July 14th, a mass rally in Dhaka will take place, culminating in a memorandum submitted to the president. Another coordinator, Asnad Abdullah, stated, "Tomorrow at 11 a.m., we will hold a mass march and submit a memorandum to the Honorable President, aiming for rational quota reform in all grades of government jobs." Simultaneously, arrangements were made for memoranda to be submitted to the President from all educational institutions, nationwide via the district commissioners. It was also announced that class and exam boycotts, as well as student strikes at universities and colleges across the country, will continue until the demands are met. July 14th, 2024 massive student march and memorandum submission for quota reform. On this day, under the banner of the anti-discrimination student movement, students organized a massive march demanding reform of the quota system in government jobs. At 12 p.m., the march began from the Central Library of Dhaka University, heading towards Bongo Bobin, President's house. The protesting students broke through police barricades at Shaba, Matsya Baban, and in front of the Secretariat, advancing toward their destination. Around 2:30 p.m., a 12-member student delegation submitted a memorandum to the military secretary of the president at Bongo Bobin. The delegation included Nahid Islam, A. Kader, Asif Mahmood, MD Mahin Sarkar, Hazib al-Islam, Sarjis, Meharanessa, Samaya, Asif, Rafat, Arif Hossein, and Masood. The memorandum demanded the withdrawal of police attacks and the filed cases against students, and issued a 24-hour ultimatum for the government to implement the students' one-point demand for quota reform. Nahid Islam, coordinator of the delegation, said, "Within the next 24 hours, we want the parliament session convened and effective action taken to pass the law." In addition to Dhaka, students in district towns across the country also submitted memoranda to the president through their respective district commissioners, reinforcing the nationwide reach and coordination of the movement. Prime Minister's controversial remarks sparked student outrage after returning from her China visit. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina held a press conference in the evening, making statements that added a new dimension to the ongoing quota reform movement. Commenting on the student demands for quota reform, she said, "Does this mean the children and grandchildren of freedom fighters are not talented? Even the children of Rajakars are talented, right?" In response to another question, she asked, "Why so much anger against the liberation war and freedom fighters? Won't the grandchildren of freedom fighters get benefits? Then should the grandchildren of Rajakars get them?" Her use of the term Rajakar against 1971 independent war provoked intense anger among the students, who considered the remarks deeply insulting. The comments sparked immediate outrage and became a catalyst for heightened protest and mobilization among the student movement. Midnight protests. Campuses erupt in response to the Prime Minister's remarks. Dhaka University became tense from 10 p.m. onwards. Students from various halls stormed into the streets at midnight, chanting slogans like, "Who are you? Who am I? Rajakar, Rajakar, we demanded our rights," and became Rajakars. These chants shook the entire campus, with both male and female students breaking hall gates to join the protests. One of the most striking moments of the day's movement. Thousands gathered in front of the Raju sculpture at the TSC, continuing demonstrations deep into the night. Students from BUET also joined, marching to Dhaka University to show solidarity. Meanwhile, at Jahangirnagar University, students began protests but reportedly faced attacks from Chhatra League activists. Similarly, at Dhaka University, Chhatra League members positioned themselves at hall gates, attempting to block students from joining the protests. July 15, 2024 campus erupts in protest against Rajakar label in response to being labeled Rajakar the previous night. Dhaka University campus was tense from the morning of July 15. By noon, hundreds of students from Dhaka University, Seven College, Dhaka Medical College, and other institutions gathered in front of the Raju sculpture, chanting slogans such as, "Shame! Shame! Who says you're a Rajakar? You're a Rajakar! You're a Rajakar! Who says you're a Rajakar? Shame! Shame!" A section of the protesters marched towards Bijoya Kader, Shahid Zur Rahman, and Bangabandha Sheikh Mujibur Rahman halls, after reports that some protesters had been detained inside the halls. Upon reaching Bijoya Kader Hall, the marchers clashed with Chhatra League leaders inside the hall, and the conflict quickly spread across the entire campus. Armed attack and violence by Chhatra League during the clashes. Chhatra League activists attacked protesters with hockey sticks, rods, sticks, and various homemade weapons. At least 5 armed individuals were reportedly seen firing pistols at protesters. This brutal attack injured at least 400 students in Dhaka alone, including female students. After 4 p.m., Chhatra League leaders and activists, equipped with helmets and sticks, began asserting visible control over Dhaka University campus, conducting drills and strategic positions at multiple points. This wave of organized violence and intimidation was not limited to Dhaka University. Reports indicate that similar clashes and aggressive actions spread to Jahangirnagar University, Chittagong University, Rajshahi, Khulna, and Sylhet, signaling a nationwide pattern of campus unrest fueled by armed student activists. Participation of private university students on this day. For the first time, students from private universities joined the quota reform movement in an organized manner. Students from North-South University, AIUB, and UIU staged road blockades at Pragoti Sarani, Bata, and Kareel in Dhaka, demonstrating their solidarity with the ongoing student-led movement. Government response. While the student protesters were being attacked, ministers and the Prime Minister of the then government issued stern statements targeting the movement. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina remarked, "What country are we in? Do they believe in conscience? What kind of education have they received?" Then Minister Obaidul Quadr stated, "Those who carry the mindset of Rajakars are Rajakars. The Student League will respond to them." Attack on hospital. The violence did not remain confined to the campus. In the evening, activists of the Chhatra League carried out several more armed attacks on injured students who were receiving treatment at Dhaka Medical College Hospital, creating widespread panic throughout the hospital. To manage the escalating situation, the university authorities held an emergency meeting in the evening. This eventful day ultimately played a historic role in transforming the student movement into a nationwide popular awakening. July 16, 2024 at Science Lab More, Dhaka, intense clashes erupted multiple times between quota reform protesters and members of Chhatra League and Jubo League. Police and hospital authorities confirmed 2 deaths in the evening. The victims were estimated to be between 25 to 30 years old, and their identities were not immediately known. The Bangladesh Border Guard, BGB, was deployed in front of Dhaka College to maintain security. At Jagannath University, clashes resulted in at least 4 students being shot. Over 150 students injured in the day's events were treated at Dhaka Medical College. In the Chankadpul area, attacks by ruling party activists left at least 5 students shot and more than 25 injured from brick assaults. These attacks were reportedly led by Dhaka South City Corporation Councillor Omar bin Abdul Aziz, a leader of the ruling party in Dhaka South. Chittagong. In Chittagong, clashes between quota reform protesters and members of Chhatra League and Jubo League left 3 people dead. Among the deceased were MD Farouk, 32, an employee at a furniture shop, and MD Wasim, 22, a student at Chittagong College. The third victim, aged 24, remained unidentified. Farouk was shot in the chest, and the third victim had gunshot wounds in the back. At least 20 others were hospitalized. To control the situation, 3 BGB platoons were deployed. Students alleged that Chhatra League and Jubo League members used firearms and petrol bombs during the attacks. Rangpur. At Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur, clashes occurred between quota reform protesters, police, and Chhatra League members. Abu Saeed was killed, and over 100 students were injured. Around 2 p.m., protesters tried to enter the university campus, leading to clashes with police using rubber bullets and tear gas. By 2:30 p.m., Chhatra League members joined the conflict, turning it into a 3-way confrontation. Saeed sustained critical injuries and died before reaching Rangpur Medical College. The campus and surrounding areas turned into a battlefield. Enraged students set fire to the vice-chancellor's residence, damaged the ground floor, and trapped the vice-chancellor, Teachers Association General Secretary, and at least 20 faculty and staff members on the second floor. Additionally, 5 vehicles, including those of the vice-chancellor and pro-vice-chancellor, were set ablaze. Nationwide, across the country, the clashes and protests resulted in a total of 6 confirmed deaths. Due to the deteriorating law and order situation, the Border Guard Bangladesh, BGB, was deployed in multiple areas to restore control. Fearlessly becoming a symbol of the state's oppression, Abu Saeed, a 22-year-old English department student and coordinator of the quota reform movement at Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur, was shot dead by police. News of his death quickly spread across social media, uniting the entire nation and transforming the quota reform movement into a more resolute and intensified struggle. His death became the catalyst for nationwide bloody clashes. Students, undeterred by fear or obstacles, rose up in defiance. Abu Sa'id's body bore multiple rubber bullet wounds, and blood flowed from his nose. Yet he was seen facing the armed police unarmed, a moment that turned him into an enduring symbol of the movement. Attacks on educational institutions and campus closures at Jahangirnagar University. A midnight attack left over 100 students injured, including 5 journalists. During clashes in Barisal, a vehicle belonging to Jamuna Television was attacked. In response to the escalating unrest, all educational institutions across the country, including colleges and universities, were ordered closed, and the HSC exams were suspended. Begum Rokeya University was closed indefinitely, and students were instructed to vacate their halls by Wednesday noon. Government and political reactions. Various ministers and leaders of the ruling Awami League issued strong statements against the protesters. Investment in the educational platform 10-Minute School was cancelled because its founder, Ayman Sadiq, publicly supported the quota reform movement on Facebook. State Minister for Information and Technology, Zunaid Ahmed Palak, cited the spread of misinformation on social media as the reason for this action. Meanwhile, the opposition BNP and its student wing, Chhatra Dal, expressed solidarity with the movement and criticized the government's handling of the situation. Chhatra Dal leaders announced a memorial prayer and coffin procession for the deceased, a program supported by other political parties as well. International reactions. The United States expressed concern over the attacks on peaceful protesters. In response, Bangladesh's Ministry of Foreign Affairs warned that the unrest could escalate further. Prominent international media outlets reported on the ongoing violent events in the country. Context of quota reform. Discussions about reforming quotas in government jobs are not new. Nearly a decade ago, the Public Service Commission, PSC, and 6 years ago, a committee led by the then Cabinet Secretary recommended quota reform, review, or simplification of the application process. In 2018, following student protests, quotas for grades 9 to 13, equivalent to first and second classes, were abolished via an official directive. Recently, the High Court declared this directive invalid, stating that all quotas should remain, though they could be adjusted, increased, or decreased as needed. The Appellate Division has since imposed a 4-week stay on quota matters. July 17, 2024. The events of July 17 were set in motion by the incidents of the previous day, July 16. On that day, attacks and clashes against protesting students occurred in various parts of the country, resulting in the deaths of at least 6 students. Among them, the killing of Abu Sa'id, a student of Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur, sparked widespread outrage across the nation. The news of his death galvanized students, making them more organized and enraged, setting the stage for the inevitable resistance on July 17. On July 17, Dhaka University became the epicenter of student activity across the country. University closure and hall evacuation orders. Due to the situation arising from the quota reform movement, the Dhaka University administration declared the campus closed indefinitely and instructed students to vacate the halls by 6 p.m. on July 17. Similar decisions were taken by Chittagong University and other major educational institutions across the country. Halls freed from Chhatra League control. Defying the administration's orders, students ousted Chhatra League, leaders and activists from various residential halls at Dhaka University and other universities, taking control of the halls themselves. This move provided the movement with a new organizational strength and boosted the students' ability to mobilize. Funeral procession and police obstruction. On July 17, at 2 p.m., a funeral prayer, Gaibana Janaza, was organized in front of the Raju sculpture at Dhaka University to honor the students killed the previous day. However, before the program could begin, the police dispersed the gathering using tear gas and sound grenades. In this attack, at least 40 people were injured, including Abdul Hanan, one of the key coordinators of the quota reform movement, and around 10 journalists. Later, at 4 p.m., students reassembled in front of the vice-chancellor's residence to complete the funeral procession. Role of teachers and students. On this day, although the police detained many students, Dhaka University teachers intervened by going to the Shaba police station and securing the release of 2 arrested students, demonstrating strong support from the academic community. Meanwhile, the police arrested Akhtar Hossain, founder of the Democratic Student Force, and sent him to remand the following day. Nationwide spread of clashes. The movement rapidly expanded beyond Dhaka, with large-scale attacks and clashes reported in at least 8 districts across the country. Jatrabari and Shoner-Akra. For the first time, the entry points of Dhaka, Jatrabari, Shoner-Akra, and the Dhaka-Chattagram Highway were occupied by protesters throughout the day. In the evening, repeated clashes occurred between police and demonstrators, continuing late into the night. At one point, the enraged crowd set fire to the Mayor Hanif flyovers Kasla Toll Plaza. Brahmanbaria, Barisal, and Bogara. In Brahmanbaria's Sarail, clashes between protesters and Chhatra League members left at least 20 people injured, including police, prompting deployment of Border Guard Bangladesh, BGB, to control the situation. In Barisal, police fired tear gas at student marches, injuring at least 22 people. In Sherpur, Bogara, clashes with police resulted in 25 people injured, including officers. Additionally, in Munshiganj, Feni, Satpura, and Gaybanda, students blocked roads and railway tracks, demonstrating the widespread scale of the protests. Government measures to control the situation. Prime Minister's speech. In the evening, then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina addressed the nation. Expressing condolences for the deceased, she said, "Who understands the pain of losing loved ones more than I do?" She urged protesters to exercise patience for the Supreme Court's verdict. However, instead of calming the movement, her speech was widely criticized and trolled on social media. Facebook and internet shut down. On the same night, the government suspended social media platforms and mobile internet services. While this move temporarily restricted communication channels, it further fueled public anger and frustration. Government measures to control the situation. Prime Minister's address. In the evening, then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina addressed the nation, expressing condolences for the deceased. "Who understands the pain of losing loved ones more than I do?" She urged protesters to remain patient and await the Supreme Court's verdict. However, rather than pacifying the movement, her speech sparked widespread criticism and trolling on social media. Social media and internet shut down. That night, the government suspended access to social media platforms and mobile internet services. While this step temporarily blocked communication channels, it further intensified public anger and frustration. Announcement of the next program. In protest against the attacks on unarmed students across the country by police, RAB, and government-backed groups, the movement announced a complete shutdown, total blockade, starting July 18th. At 8 p.m., the announcement was made via Facebook by Asif Mahmood, one of the coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement demanding quota reform. Asif Mahmood wrote, "In protest against the heinous attacks on students' peaceful movement by police, BGB, RAB, and SWAT, demanding justice for the killings, ensuring campuses free from terror, and for one-step implementation of quota reform, we declare a complete shutdown across the country tomorrow, July 18th. Except for hospitals and emergency services, no institution will open its doors, and no vehicles will move on the roads except ambulances." July 18th, 2024, Thursday, the flames of protest, which began in Dhaka, spread to 47 districts across the country, leaving behind a tragic trail of casualties by the end of the day. Throughout the day, clashes, shootings, and violence resulted in the deaths of at least 27 people nationwide, while more than 1,500 individuals were injured. Dhaka, a city turned battlefield, the epicenter of the day's protests was the capital, Dhaka. From dawn, demonstrators blocked key roads and entry points to the city. As the day progressed, the situation grew increasingly tense, and several parts of the capital turned into battlegrounds. Uttara, the Valley of Death. The deadliest clashes occurred in Uttara's Jaisamuddin, house building, and surrounding areas. When law enforcement attempted to disperse students blocking the Dhaka, Mymensingh Highway, violent confrontations erupted throughout the day. Police and RAB fired tear gas shells, sound grenades, and rubber bullets, while protesters responded by throwing stones and bricks. According to witnesses, police and ruling party activists opened fire indiscriminately on unarmed protesters. At El East, 11 people were killed in this area alone, confirmed by several hospital authorities. Among the dead were Mir Mugdo, known for distributing water to protesters, and Asif, a student of Northern University. Hospitals such as Bangladesh Kuwait Friendship Hospital, Uthara Modern Medical College, and Crescent Hospital were overwhelmed with the injured. Jatrabari, Shanir Accra. The blocked gateway Dhaka's southeastern entry points, Jatrabari, Kajla, and Shanir Accra, remained in turmoil all day as fierce clashes broke out between protesters and police. The Dhaka-Chittagong highway remained blocked for more than 24 hours, stranding hundreds of vehicles atop the Mayor Hanif flyover. The situation worsened after protesters set fire to the flyover's Dania Toll Plaza the previous night. In this area alone, 6 people, including a journalist, were killed. As night fell, the area remained tense, with protesters lighting tires on the streets to maintain their resistance. To control the situation, the government deployed 229 platoons of Border Guard Bangladesh, BGB, across Dhaka and other parts of the country. Dhanmondi and Lalmasha. A shadow of morning in Dhanmondi 27. Clashes between police, ruling party activists, and protesting students led to the tragic death of Farhan Faiz, an 11th grade student of Dhaka Residential Model College, who was shot dead. His death sparked nationwide outrage and became a symbol of the day's brutality. Bata, Pragoti Sarani. Police rescued by helicopter on Pragoti Sarani students from BRAC, East-West, North-South, and other private universities blocked roads, triggering intense clashes with police. At one point, several police officers took shelter inside the Canadian University of Bangladesh as thousands of students surrounded the building. From inside, police fired rubber bullets and birdshot, injuring many. By afternoon, the situation escalated so severely that trapped police officers had to be airlifted by helicopter. Protesters later alleged that gunfire and tear gas were also fired from the helicopter. Mirpur and other areas heavy clashes also broke out at Mirpur 10 Circle, where protesters set fire to a police box. Smoke from a burning bus reached the metro rail line, forcing authorities to suspend operations at 4 stations. Elsewhere, Mohakali, Azimpur, Rampura, and Shantinagar, protests and violence spread rapidly. Government offices like the Disaster Management Directorate and Bridge Division in Mohakali, as well as the BTV headquarters in Rampura, were set on fire. As a result, Bangladesh Television's broadcast was temporarily suspended. Nationwide flames of protest beyond Dhaka. The movement spread like wildfire across the country. Protesters took to the streets in Chattagram, Narsingdi, Savar, Madaripur, Rangpur, and Sylhet, joining the nationwide uprising. In several districts, government buildings, police stations, and offices of the Awami League and its affiliated organizations came under attack. At least 8 people were killed in clashes with police outside Dhaka. In Chattagram and Kumilla, violent confrontations raged for hours as protesters and law enforcement, along with ruling party activists, engaged in continuous running battles, turning city streets into war zones. Nationwide flames of protest beyond the capital Dhaka, the movement spread like wildfire across the country. Protesters took to the streets in Chattagram, Narsingdi, Savar, Madaripur, Rangpur, and Sylhet, intensifying the wave of demonstrations. In various districts, government establishments, police stations, and offices of the Awami League and its affiliated organizations came under attack. At least 8 people were killed in clashes with police outside Dhaka. The most violent confrontations occurred in Chattagram and Kumilla, where protesters, police, and ruling party supporters engaged in hours-long running battles, turning those cities into scenes of chaos and resistance. Although the government expressed its policy-level agreement with the demand for quota reform, the extreme violence on the streets effectively closed the door to dialogue. On behalf of the student movement coordinators, Hasnat Abdullah firmly declared, "Bullets and dialogue cannot go hand in hand." This bloody day gave the quota reform movement a new and unstoppable momentum. The deaths of students and the brutal actions of the law enforcement agencies drew widespread criticism both domestically and internationally. Despite countless obstacles and tragic loss of lives, the protesters remained steadfast in their demands. Private universities. The role of private university students in the history of the 2024 mass uprising will forever be written in golden letters. when the public university-based movement was almost silenced by repression and student leaders were forced to leave their campuses, leaving them disoriented. It was the private university students who rose up. Through their indomitable courage, unprecedented coordination, and self-sacrifice, the movement gained a new momentum that ultimately hastened the fall of autocracy. In the words of Sargees Alam, one of the leading organizers of the anti-discrimination student movement, the private university students' fight back, with blood and life, marked a new chapter in the history of this uprising. A dying movement by mid-July, when the quota reform movement was at its peak, the government's harsh repression was gradually weakening resistance at public universities. The situation became even more volatile on July 16th, after police shot and killed Abu Saeed, a student of Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur. In response, the government announced the indefinite closure of all educational institutions in the country and ordered students to vacate their dormitories. As many frontline leaders were picked up by law enforcement, a leadership crisis emerged, and there were growing fears that the movement might fizzle out. When public university students were scattered after leaving campus, many thought this was the end of the movement. A historic resistance, although the movement seemed stagnant until July 17th, everything changed dramatically on July 18th. On this day, the streets of Dhaka were completely taken over by students from private universities, shifting the course of the movement entirely. From early morning, thousands of students from almost all private universities, including North-South, BRAC, East-West, American International University, Bangladesh, AIUB, United International University, UIU, Independent University, Bangladesh, IUB, Daffodil, ULAB, and Manarat, gathered at key points across Dhaka such as Rampura, Bata, Pragdisarani, Uthara, Banani, and Dhanmondi. The most notable event of the day revolved around BRAC University, when police and armed activists from the ruling party attacked the protesting students. The students took shelter inside the university. As the attackers tried to break through the university gates to enter, the students established a strong resistance within the campus. With the support of BRAC students, students from nearby universities, including East-West University, joined in the defense. Faced with their combined resistance, the attackers were forced to retreat, and after being trapped for several hours, they had to be evacuated by helicopter. An unprecedented scene in the history of the student movement. Unprecedented coordination and modern tactics. The private university students' movement was not merely spontaneous. It was backed by highly organized planning and the use of modern technology. Although initially coordinated through Facebook posts, within a few days they established platforms such as the Central Private Alliance Committee. For communication, they used encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Discord. To counter government measures like internet blackouts, they even relied on radio frequencies to maintain uninterrupted communication, demonstrating their foresight and preparedness. Facebook pages like the Private University Students Alliance of Bangladesh, PUSAB, played a crucial role in keeping the flow of information active at the start of the movement. Sacrifice and an indelible history. The participation of private university students in this uprising came with enormous sacrifices. According to one record, while 13 public university students were martyred, the number of martyrs from private universities reached 33. Another detailed account puts this number at 40, significantly higher than the public university casualties. On July 18th alone, 23 private university students lost their lives to police gunfire. The cause behind the movement: an explosion of accumulated frustration. The massive participation of private university students was fueled by long-standing grievances and a history of deprivation. Over generations, their almost invisible presence in government jobs, only 0.00074% in first and second-class positions, and the social and economic public-private disparities had created deep-seated frustration. Their experiences in earlier movements, such as the 2015 VAT protests and the 2018 quota reform and safe roads movements, helped them organize effectively in the 2024 uprising. Coupled with ongoing corruption, unemployment, and the shrinking of democratic rights, all these factors led to a peak of anger that erupted in July. Role of teachers and recognition. Despite job insecurity, a small number of private university teachers stood by the students. Teachers from North-South University were the first to publicly show solidarity through human chains. Later, teachers from Brack University, Uttara University, and ULAB followed suit. However, since the interim government formed after the movement included no representatives from private universities among the student advisors, many believe their contributions were officially overlooked. In recognition of this historic role, students have called for July 18th to be declared Private University Resistance Day. On July 17, 2024, journalist Mushfiqul Fazil Ansari presented a detailed account of Abu Sayyid's killing to the United States Department of State. Journalist: there is a crackdown on student protests in Bangladesh. At least 6 students have been killed at the hands of the ruling forces. The ruling party's affiliated organization, the Chhatra League, is treating students, especially girls and women, with particular brutality, and it has done this repeatedly over the past 1.5 decades. Would you consider the Chhatra League a terrorist organization? Spokesperson: I'm not going to speak specifically on that, but I will say that we have been monitoring the violence that occurred during the student protests in Dhaka, and we are calling for the protests to remain peaceful and condemning any violence against peaceful demonstrations. Journalist: one more question. A young student of English literature at Begum Rokeya University, Abu Sayyid, bravely stood before the police to protect his classmates. But the ruling forces did not hesitate to shoot him. He didn't even realize he had been shot while rescuing his friends. Sheikh Hasina is maintaining power like this just before a sham election. I'm sorry. The foreign minister has said the whole world is observing Bangladesh's election and that the State Department and the United States will take all necessary steps. But when people's rights are being taken away, you suddenly become silent. Why is that? Spokesperson: well, firstly, that is not correct. You have heard me say this several times this week. I said it on Monday, I think I said it yesterday, and I said it today, that we condemn any violence against peaceful protest. We are watching this very closely. Both our embassy and officials in Washington are monitoring it. They are observing the protests and have seen reports of deaths and people killed at these demonstrations. And again, we call on the government to preserve the personal right to protest peacefully. Journalists played an extremely important and courageous role in the mass uprising of the students and the people. Their contribution to changing the country's landscape with the aim of toppling fascism was undeniable. Risking their lives, they delivered objective news of the movement and struggle to the public. During this critical period, Jamuna television became a symbol of public trust. Throughout the movement, the channel reported news with courage, presenting truthful information to the people. While many media outlets hesitated to publish news under government pressure, Jamuna TV established itself as a reliable source of information. July 19, 2024. To control the protest situation, the government imposed a nationwide curfew from midnight on July 18. At the same time, it was decided to deploy the military to assist the civilian administration. July 19 marked the second day of a continuous 5-day nationwide internet shutdown, causing stagnation in daily life and obstructing the flow of information. To handle ongoing conflicts and violence, 300 platoons of the Border Guard Bangladesh, BGB, were deployed across the country, including 75 platoons stationed in Dhaka alone. Each platoon, consisting of 30 members, took positions in conflict-prone areas from early morning. To suppress the student movement, the Dhaka Metropolitan Police, DMP, declared an indefinite ban on all types of meetings, gatherings, and rallies in the city. At midnight, Nahid Islam, the central coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, was arrested. Nurul Haq Nur, the president of the Ganatikar Parishad, was also detained. Struggle and clashes on the streets, ignoring the curfew and the massive presence of law enforcement, students responded to the call of the anti-discrimination student movement by carrying out a complete shutdown or total blockade. This led to repeated clashes between protesters and police in various areas of the capital, including Bata, Rampura, Uttara, Mohammadpur, Jatrabari, and Paltan. From early morning, protesters took positions at different points on the streets armed with bricks and sticks. On the other hand, police, RAB, and BGB personnel, along with leaders and activists of the ruling party, were also seen on the streets carrying sticks. To disperse the protesters, the police fired tear gas shells, sound grenades, rubber bullets, and shotguns. From Rampura Bridge to Meral Bata, protesters broke iron railings from the road dividers and used them to block streets. They were even seen bringing wood from sawmills to barricade roads. The protesters chanted slogans targeting the police, shouting, "Fake, fake." Clashes and chase incidents continued throughout the day on the embankment in Mohammadpur, the roads in front of Rajlakshmi Center and BNS Tower in Ithara, and in Jatrabari and Shoni Akra. In Rampura and other parts of Dhaka, RAB helicopters were even seen firing tear gas, sound grenades, and bullets at protesters. Amid this extreme tension, 56 deaths were reported on July 19 alone, bringing the total number of casualties over the previous 3 days to 103. The 9-point demands of the protesters and talks with the government amid rising tensions, the protesters clearly articulated their demands. On behalf of the anti-discrimination student movement, 9 demands were announced, with the statement that the complete shutdown would continue until these demands were met. The demands were: 1. The Prime Minister must acknowledge responsibility for the student killings and apologize to the nation. 2. The Home Minister and the Transport Minister must resign from their ministries and political positions for their roles in the student killings. 3. The DIG and Superintendent of Police in areas where student killings occurred must be dismissed. 4. Vice-Chancellors and Proctors of Dhaka, Rajshahi, Jahangirnagar, and Barisal universities must resign. 5. Families of all deceased students and the injured must receive appropriate compensation. 6. Police and ruling party terrorists involved in the student killings must be arrested and murder cases filed against them. 7. Party-affiliated student politics must be banned and student parliament elections must be held. 8. All educational institutions and residential halls must be reopened immediately. 9. Measures must be taken to ensure that students participating in the movement do not face academic or administrative harassment. While clashes continued on the streets, 3 leaders of the movement met with 3 government ministers at the State Guest House Padma. Present from the anti-discrimination student movement were Coordinator Sarjiz Alam, Hasnat Abdullah, and Co-Coordinator Hazib Al-Islam. Representing the government were Law Minister Anisul Haq, Education Minister Mahibul Hassan Chowdhury, and State Minister for Information and Broadcasting Muhammad Ali Arafat. Abdul Qadir, one of the key coordinators of the movement, stated, "Many of our coordinators have been forcibly disappeared and are being used as examples in media trials. The shutdown program will continue until our demands are fully met." Sheikh Ashabul Yaman, a student of the Military Institute of Science and Technology, MIST, was killed during the quota reform movement in Bangladesh in July 2024. On July 18, during protests in Savar, he was shot and killed in clashes with the police. After Yaman's death, a video showing his lifeless body being thrown onto the street from a police armored personnel carrier, APC, went viral on social media. In the video, the shot and injured Yaman is seen being dragged off the APC and thrown to the ground, sparking widespread outrage and condemnation across the country. This brutal incident intensified the quota reform movement, and the video quickly spread both nationally and internationally. On the 19th, the government faced severe criticism over the circulation of this footage. Awami League leader Obaidul Qadir instructed party activists to establish total resistance. Meanwhile, the then State Minister for Information, Muhammad Ali Arafat, attempted to politicize the movement, stating, "A third party has entered here. Look at their dress. Look at their physical appearance. Look at their warlike and destructive approach. They are not students. They are a third-party terrorist group, terrorists from Jamaat BNP." In contrast, the BNP announced its support for the protesters until their demands were met. Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir said, "In the context of the ongoing movement, we once again declare our full and continued support for the anti-discrimination student movement's declared complete shutdown program." Rebellion at Narsingdi jail. The situation outside Dhaka was equally dire. On this day, the gates of Narsingdi district jail were broken open, allowing 826 inmates to escape, and weapons were looted from the jail's armory. Reports in the media indicated that among the escapees were 7 members of Ansarullah Bangla team and 2 female members of JMB. During the incident, 85 weapons and 1,050 rounds of ammunition were seized. Overall, July 19, 2024, became a nightmarish day for Bangladesh, revealing the terrifying scale of a nationwide mass uprising that had erupted around a student movement demanding quota reform. Mobile phone conversation between the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the then Mayor of Dhaka South City Corporation, Sheikh Fazli Noor Tapash. Sheikh Hasina, I have spoken with the army chief. They will be ready. I am arranging other measures now. Drone footage is being taken. Helicopters have also been kept ready at several locations. Sheikh Fazli Noor Tapash. So, after seeing the footage, can some people be arrested during the night? Sheikh Hasina, I have told them to arrest everyone at night. Tapash. Yes, if they are arrested they will learn a lesson. Sheikh Hasina, that instruction has been given. RAB, DGFI, everyone has been told to catch as many as you can from wherever you can. And wherever you see a crowd, I am arranging for firing from above. In some places it has already started. Tapash. Yes. Sheikh Hasina, it has started. Tapash. I think they are moving toward Mohammadpur police station. Sheikh Hasina, toward Mohammadpur police station? Tapash. Yes. Sheikh Hasina, then send RAB there. Tapash, your directive will be needed. Sheikh Hasina, my clear directive has already been given. I have ordered the use of lethal weapons. Fire directly where you find them. Tapash. Yes. Sheikh Hasina, they have been told. I had been holding back because I was concerned for the students' safety until now. The disappearance of Nahid Islam. On July 19, 2024, Nahid Islam, one of the coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement, was taken away from a friend's house in Kilgaon by people identifying themselves as members of the DB, Detective Branch, Police. The next day, July 20th, his anxious parents rushed to the office of the detective branch in Dhaka. With fear on their faces and pleading for the return of their child, Nahid's mother said, "We have not received any information yet. We want our son. I want to tell the nation, please bring my son back to me quickly and safely." Nahid's father, Badrul Islam Jamir, stated that around 2:30 a.m., approximately 50 to 60 people identifying themselves as DB personnel came and pressured Nahid to enter into dialogue with the government. In response, Nahid reportedly said, "How can we have dialogue when nearly 50 to 60 of my friends have been killed in the movement?" The DB office, however, claimed that no one named Nahid Islam was in their custody. The other coordinators of the movement were deeply concerned for the safety of Nahid and his fellow activists. At that time, Sargis and Hasnat rejected any possibility of dialogue with the government in statements to journalists. Sargis said, "We will keep searching today as long as it is possible, but if that time limit expires, then from tomorrow onward there will be a continuous nationwide shutdown. We can never enter into negotiations after wading through the blood of martyrs." Finally, on the morning of July 21st, Nahid Islam was found unconscious in the Purbakal area of Dhaka. His body bore horrific signs of torture that shocked people across the country. After regaining consciousness, Nahid described the mental and physical torture inflicted on him. He said, "They interrogated me about the movement, why we are protesting, what the objectives of the movement are, why we are not withdrawing our program. Afterwards, they began mentally and physically torturing me, and at one point I became senseless." He had deep wounds on both hands, both shoulders, and his left leg. He said, "Mentally I am inside trauma." July 20th, 2024. On the night of July 19th, a meeting was held at Ganababin under the leadership of the then Prime Minister with law enforcement officials and leaders of the 14-party alliance. After the meeting, Obaidul Quadr stated, "A proclamation is coming from the cabinet. Therefore, this will definitely include a curfew, and there is also a shoot-at-sight order." That same night, 3 influential government ministers met with the protesters at the State Guest House Padma. Law Minister Anisul Haq told the media, "The students' demands are reasonable, and the government is hopeful of reaching a solution." Additionally, the then Prime Minister's visits to Spain and Brazil were cancelled. Heavy military presence was visible on every major road in the capital, creating a tense and terrifying atmosphere throughout the city. On the night of the 19th, a meeting was held at Ganababin under the leadership of the then Prime Minister with law enforcement agencies and leaders of the 14-party alliance. After the meeting, Obaidul Quadr said, "A proclamation is being issued from the cabinet. Therefore, This will definitely involve a curfew, and there is also a shoot-at-sight order in place. On the night of July 19th, 3 influential ministers of the government held discussions with the protesters at the state guest house, Padma. Law Minister Anisul Haq told the media, "The students' demands are reasonable, and the government is hopeful of reaching a solution." Additionally, the then Prime Minister's trips to Spain and Brazil were cancelled. Heavy military presence was seen on every important road in the capital, creating a terrifying and tense atmosphere all around. On July 20th, widespread violence and destruction erupted in Dhaka and across the country. Many people were killed and injured by indiscriminate police firing. In response, an enraged public set fire to and vandalized various government and private establishments. 2 metro rail stations were so severely damaged that the authorities at the time stated it could take over a year to restore them to operational status. Political repression blaming the BNP and other opposition parties as the forces behind the movement, the government launched a severe crackdown. More than 70 leaders and activists, including senior BNP leaders Amir Khosrow Mahmood Chowdhury, Nazrul Islam Khan, and Ruhul Kabir Rizvi, were arrested. International reaction and government's explanation. The turbulent situation in Bangladesh received extensive coverage in international media. However, the then Foreign Minister Dr. Hassan Mahmood claimed that some international media outlets were spreading false and distorted news. He stated, "Some international media have published distorted and colored news regarding the events in our country over the past few days." The sequence of events that day not only accelerated the downfall of a government, but also marked the beginning of a new chapter, highlighting the indomitable courage and united struggle of the country's young generation. July 21st, 2024. On one side, the streets were shrouded in the silence of a nationwide curfew and an internet blackout, while instead of waiting for August 7th, attention was fixed on a historic Supreme Court verdict. Amidst these, widespread violence and loss of life continued on the streets. The nonviolent movement demanding quota reform took on a new dimension on this day, impacting not only the country's future, but also casting uncertainty over the fate of the then government. Historic Supreme Court verdict. As the entire nation's eyes were on the Supreme Court, a full 7-member bench of the Appellate Division, led by Chief Justice Obaidul Hassan, announced a historic verdict. After a lengthy hearing, the High Court's earlier ruling on the reinstatement of quotas in government jobs was largely annulled or set aside. The court directed that 93% of positions in government employment must be filled on the basis of merit. Of the remaining 7%, 5% would be reserved for freedom fighters, 1% for small ethnic groups, and 1% for persons with disabilities and the transgender community. The verdict further stated, notwithstanding this directive and order, the government may, if necessary and considering overall circumstances, cancel, amend, or reform the specified quotas. Clashes and loss of life on the streets. Although the then government's ministers described the Supreme Court verdict as a peaceful solution, the reality on the streets was entirely different. Ignoring the curfew and strict security measures, protesters took to the streets in Dhaka and other parts of the country. Repeated clashes with law enforcement turned various areas into battlegrounds throughout the day. On this day, at least 19 people were killed across Dhaka and the country. Of these, 10 bodies were brought to Dhaka Medical College Hospital alone. Additionally, 4 people were killed in Narsingdi, 2 in Gazipur, 1 in Narayanganj, 1 in Savar, and 1 in Chittagong. Hundreds of protesters were injured in various ways, including gunshot wounds, creating a heart-wrenching situation in hospitals across Dhaka. Eyewitnesses reported that law enforcement opened fire directly on protesters in areas such as Chittagong Road, Signboard, and Prugdi Sarani in the Bashundhara residential area. Curfew, internet blackout, and repression to suppress the movement. The government shut down internet services nationwide for the 4th consecutive day and extended the curfew indefinitely from July 21st. Despite this suffocating situation, the coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement communicated their stance through brief messages. In a statement on behalf of 56 coordinators, they said, "The government cannot escape responsibility for the killings through a court verdict alone." They accused the government of killing over 300 students and citizens and gave a 48-hour deadline to fulfill 4 demands: withdrawal of the curfew, restoration of internet services, reopening of university halls, and ensuring the safety of protesters. At the same time, nationwide symbolic funeral programs were announced for July 22nd. On this day, one of the movement's coordinators, Nahid Islam, was rescued in a critically injured state from the East Dhaka area, Purbakal. Government and opposition reactions. The then Awami League government welcomed the verdict and tried to steer the situation in a different direction. Law Minister Anisul Haq claimed, "The anti-quota movement is being exploited by Jamaat BNP, Chhatra Sherbur, and factions of student parties to carry out destruction." State Minister for Information and Broadcasting Muhammad Ali Arafat added, "The government's firm actions will target terrorism." To maintain its international image, the government briefed foreign diplomats, blaming opposition forces for the ongoing destruction. On the other hand, BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir accused the government of using the media to shift blame onto opposition parties to cover up their failures. He said, "The government is attempting to use the media to place responsibility on opposition parties for the situation in Dhaka." At night, the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina held a meeting with top military and civilian officials, instructing them to adopt even stricter measures. The events of July 21st were essentially a dramatic day of a three-way confrontation between the court, the government, and the student public movement. While the Supreme Court verdict provided a legal resolution to the quota system, the bloodshed on the streets and the government's repression pushed the movement closer to becoming a trigger for the potential downfall of the government. July 22, 2024. On this day, the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina felt that she had achieved a victory. On one hand, she met with business leaders, sending a message of a firm stance, while on the other, law enforcement across the country launched comb-through operations. Alongside the Prime Minister's signature on the quota reform proclamation, protesters issued a 48-hour ultimatum. Amid the nationwide curfew and internet blackout, news of new casualties further intensified concerns. In the afternoon, at a meeting in the Prime Minister's office with the country's top business leaders, Sheikh Hasina convened a discussion. During the meeting, business leaders expressed deep concern and disappointment over the violence sparked by the recent quota reform movement. They pledged to stand by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina under any circumstances and to support the measures she had taken. In the meeting, the business leaders described the ongoing crisis as an ominous warning for the country's economy. FBCCI President Mahbubul Alam said, "It is like our hearts are bleeding. We have always stood with the Honorable Prime Minister. We stand with you now, and, God willing, the business community will continue to stand with you in the future." His words were echoed by other business leaders. BGMEA President SM Manan spoke unequivocally, saying, "We are by your side. Even if it costs our lives, we will stand with you. This country will move forward if you remain in power." In this meeting, State Minister for Information and Broadcasting Muhammad Arafat presented a different perspective on the ongoing violence, stating, "Third parties are carrying out attacks through arson and terrorist methods." He claimed that Jamaat and Chhatra Sherbur have political motives behind this sabotage. The Prime Minister echoed this sentiment, alleging that the BNP and Jamaat were trying to create instability in the country by using the student movement as a shield and attacking government establishments. Addressing rumors, she said, "Rumors have spread within the movement claiming that Sheikh Hasina has fled. Let me clarify, Sheikh Hasina has not fled, and she will not flee." Comb-through operations and mass arrests nationwide to suppress the violence. Law enforcement agencies launched comb-through operations across the country starting Monday. As part of these operations, approximately 1,427 individuals, including leaders and activists of the BNP and Jamaat Islami, were arrested nationwide on that day. In Dhaka alone, reports indicate that 516 people were arrested within 6 hours. Around 50 cases were filed across the country related to the violent incidents, implicating approximately 20,000 unidentified individuals. Approval of quota reform proclamation and protesters' ultimatum amid escalating tensions, the government took a significant step. On July 21st, in alignment with the Supreme Court Appellate Division's verdict, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina signed the summary from the Ministry of Public Administration regarding quota reform. On the night of July 22nd, she formally approved it, paving the way for 93% of government job positions to be filled based on merit, while the remaining 7% would be allocated according to quotas. However, even after this government action, the protesters did not fully withdraw their program. Nahid Islam, one of the coordinators of the quota movement, announced the suspension of the complete shutdown program for 48 hours. During this period, the government was given an ultimatum to meet 4 specific demands. 1. Lift the nationwide curfew. 2. Restore the suspended internet services. 3. Reopen all universities and residential halls. 4. Ensure the safety of the movement's coordinators. Rising death toll and the stifling atmosphere. The most alarming aspect of the events on July 22nd was the continued loss of life. On this day, reports emerged of 13 more deaths in the clashes, bringing the total number of fatalities over 6 days to 187. By Monday, 68 bodies had been handed over to families from Dhaka Medical College Hospital alone. Across the country, the period of general holidays was extended until Tuesday, and the curfew remained in effect, although it was relaxed between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. With the country remaining without internet for the 5th consecutive day, daily life came to a standstill. The extensive presence of the army, police, and RAB, along with armored patrols on major roads in the capital, created a tense and oppressive atmosphere. July 23, 2024 quota reform. Amid the protests facing the movement, the Sheikh Hasina government adopted a somewhat flexible stance and decided to reform the quota system in government jobs. On July 21st, the Supreme Court Appellate Division issued a verdict to reform the quota system, directing that 93% of government job positions be filled based on merit, 5% reserved for freedom fighters, and the remaining 2% allocated to other disadvantaged groups. In alignment with this verdict, on July 23rd, the Ministry of Public Administration issued a Gazette notification declaring that, for direct recruitment in government, semi-government, and autonomous institutions, 93% of positions would be filled on merit. The Gazette specified that 5% of the quota would be reserved for children of freedom fighters, martyred freedom fighters, and Biranganas, 1% for small ethnic groups, and 1% for persons with disabilities and the transgender community. Law Minister Anisul Haq stated that this new quota system would apply to all government, semi-government, autonomous institutions, and various corporations for direct recruitment. However, the coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement rejected this measure, calling it too little and too late. By this time, their demands had extended beyond mere quota reform. They insisted on justice for those killed and injured by law enforcement during the ongoing protests, the resignation of the Home Minister and the Road Transport Minister, a public apology from the Prime Minister acknowledging responsibility for the deaths, the release of arrested protesters, and an end to government repression. Repression, arrests, and the tense situation. On July 23rd, a nationwide curfew was in place, yet government crackdowns on protesters and opposition leaders continued. Many people were killed across the country, including in Dhaka. A leading hospital in Dhaka reported treating at least 200 people injured by gunfire. Scenes of detainees being transported to courts in police vans were common throughout the day. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina blamed the opposition BNP for instigating the unrest, saying, "BNP is inciting this." This strict crackdown created a tense and fearful atmosphere nationwide, leaving the country in a state of paralysis and apprehension. Internet connectivity, partially restored, not fully after nationwide internet services were almost completely shut down on July 18th. The situation began to change slightly on July 23rd. On this day, the government announced the limited restoration of broadband internet services at key locations such as banks, commercial institutions, and the export sector. However, connectivity for the general public remained suspended, and social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp continued to be blocked. Full residential broadband services were restored from July 24th, and mobile internet was reinstated on July 28th, ending nearly a 10-day-long internet blackout. This prolonged disruption severely impacted the country's economy, particularly the e-commerce and ICT sectors. July 24th, 2024. On July 24th, 2024, Three coordinators of the Quota Reform Movement Platform, Anti-Discrimination Student Movement, Asif Mahmood, Abu Bakr Majumdar, and Rafat Rashid, were found after being missing for 5 days. Allegations surfaced that they had been abducted by unidentified individuals on July 19th. Both Asif Mahmood and Abu Bakr Majumdar stated in their Facebook posts that they had been blindfolded for 5 days. Asif was released in the Hatijal area of Dhaka, while Abu Bakr was released in the Dhanmondi area. In his post, Asif further mentioned that on the night of July 19th, he was taken from a residential area in Hatijal and pressured to stop participating in the movement. When he refused, he was reportedly rendered unconscious through injections. Abu Bakr also stated that he was confined in a dark room and pressured to announce the withdrawal of the movement. The third coordinator, Rafat Rashid, wrote on Facebook that he barely escaped abduction and had gone into hiding. Both Asif Mahmood and Abu Bakr Majumdar mentioned in their Facebook posts that they had been blindfolded for 5 days. Asif was released in the Hatijal area of Dhaka, while Abu Bakr was released in Dhanmondi, still blindfolded. In his post, Asif further explained that on the night of July 19th, he had been taken from a residential area in Hatijal and pressured to stop participating in the movement. When he refused, he was reportedly rendered unconscious through injections. Curfew relaxation and resumption of economic activity to control nationwide violence and rising tensions, the government relaxed the curfew on Wednesday. After a 3-day general holiday, government and private offices, banks, and factories were allowed to reopen. However, official work was conducted in a limited time frame, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. instead of normal hours. This decision helped revive the country's economic momentum, particularly restarting garment factories and bringing some activity back to commercial operations. Partial restoration of communication services as the nationwide lockdown eased, interdistrict bus and launch services partially resumed. Limited long-distance bus services began operating from Dhaka terminals, and a few launches departed from Saturgat terminal toward Chandapur and Bola. However, trains and metro rail services remained suspended due to security concerns. On this day, approximately 40% of the country's broadband connections were restored. While broadband services began returning, mobile internet and social media platforms, including Facebook, remained blocked. Protests by remittance workers. The ongoing unrest in Bangladesh also caused widespread concern among the Bangladeshi diaspora. On July 19th, Bangladeshis living in the United Arab Emirates staged protests in solidarity with the movement back home. In response, the Bangladesh embassy in Abu Dhabi and the consulate general in Dubai warned expatriates to refrain from such activities. However, the aftermath was severe. A local court in the UAE swiftly sentenced 57 Bangladeshis to long-term imprisonment for participating in protests against the Bangladeshi government. Among them, one received a life sentence, while others were sentenced to 10 to 11 years in prison. This incident drew strong criticism from international human rights organizations. Additionally, expatriate Bangladeshis in countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia also protested against the killing of students and government repression. Using social media, they played a key role in generating global awareness and support for the movement. Bangladeshis across the world organized both online and offline campaigns to strongly oppose the authoritarian government's crackdown. In the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Middle Eastern countries, they held rallies, human chains, and other demonstrations, contributing significantly to shaping international public opinion. A pivotal chapter in this global support was the protest by the remittance warriors. In response to the government's violent attacks on students, and to exert economic pressure, they temporarily halted remittance transfers through official channels. This move served as a powerful, nonviolent form of protest, giving the movement a new dimension and amplifying its impact. July 25, 2024, various measures taken at the highest levels of government further complicated the situation. Following the deployment of the military, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina appeared in public for the first time on this day. However, rather than calming the protesters, her actions sparked widespread criticism. On the morning of this day, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited the heavily damaged Mirpur 10 metro rail station in Dhaka, which had suffered extensive destruction due to the protests and vandalism. During the inspection, she was reportedly overwhelmed by emotion and broke down in tears upon witnessing the destruction. Speaking to the media, she called on the public to resist those responsible for destroying the country's developmental infrastructure, stating, "I am seeking justice from the people." She added, "We will ensure that ordinary citizens can reach their workplaces without hindrance, and we will strive to make the country economically prosperous." However, the Prime Minister's visit and statements further inflamed tensions. Many protesting students and citizens felt that the government's focus on infrastructure damage, rather than the deaths and injuries of hundreds of demonstrators, reflected insensitivity. Observing her tears over the metro rail while not expressing grief for the victims of police shootings, many labeled her display as theatrical. Various memes circulated on social media using images of Sheikh Hasina crying, among which one titled "Stop the Drama" (PO) became particularly notable. Widespread arrests and detention of political leaders on the same day, the government intensified its nationwide crackdown and arrest operations. Among those detained were Andalib Rahman Partho, chairman of the Jatiya Party, BJP, and former member of parliament, and prominent businessman David Hasnat, head of the Velitex Group. They were shown as arrested in cases related to arson and vandalism at Situ Baban on July 18th, and subsequently, a Dhaka court granted a 5-day remand. Several other leaders, activists, and protesters were also arrested across the country. Rising casualties and the death toll from the ongoing violence continued to rise. On July 25th, 3 more protesters died while undergoing treatment, bringing the total fatalities to 204, though figures varied slightly across different sources. A tense and paralyzed atmosphere prevailed nationwide, and the government maintained the curfew to control the situation. However, for the weekend, Friday and Saturday, it announced a partial relaxation of the curfew for 9 hours. International concern. Meanwhile, the international community expressed deep concern over the ongoing violence, mass arrests, and restrictions on media in Bangladesh. The United Nations, Amnesty International, the United States, and Canada called on the government to end the repression. On July 25th, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk issued a statement expressing concern over reports of excessive force used to suppress protests, urging authorities to exercise restraint and reminding law enforcement agencies to adhere to international human rights standards. Amnesty International reported evidence that police had used lethal weapons against demonstrators. Students' firm stand. Coordinator Nahid Islam stated in a declaration that since no law regarding quota reform had been passed in Parliament, they did not see any conclusive solution in the government's circular. The students were not satisfied with unilateral decisions made without discussion and remained steadfast in continuing the movement until their demands were met. July 26, 2024. Amid the quota reform movement, the day passed with nationwide police raids, the detention of top movement leaders, and escalating political tensions across the country. Law enforcement agencies launched simultaneous block raids or area-based mass operations across the country. These raids were conducted in response to alleged violence and sabotage linked to the quota reform movement. According to various media reports, at least 555 cases were filed nationwide, and 6,264 people were arrested. In Dhaka, a heavy police presence was observed in areas such as Jatrabari, Mohakali, Bata, Mirpur, and Mohammadpur, with many individuals detained. The sudden and extensive nature of these operations spread widespread fear among the general public. Arrest of student coordinators from the hospital. The day's most significant event was the detention of the 3 main coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement from a hospital. Nahid Islam, Asif Mahmood, and Abu Bakar Majumdar were receiving treatment at Dhaka's Ganeshasthya Nagar Hospital in Dhanmondi when the Dhaka Metropolitan Detective Branch, DB, took them into their custody. The incident immediately sparked strong reactions. However, the then Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan Kamal claimed they were not arrested. They were taken into custody for their security. While the government described it as being held in protective custody, the general public, activists, and opposition parties perceived it as a detention and an attempt to suppress the movement. On the same day, the country's main opposition party, BNP, called for a national unity movement, which further heightened the ongoing unrest. Meanwhile, following the curfew announcement, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina made a second public appearance by visiting Dhaka Medical College Hospital. International concern and UN appeal. The ongoing situation in Bangladesh drew international attention and concern. The United Nations called on the Bangladesh government to halt the repression and fully restore internet services across the country. This appeal highlighted that the domestic unrest had captured the attention of the international community. Abu Saeed's death and controversy. On this day, the death of Abu Saeed, a student of Begum Rokeya University, became a topic of renewed discussion. According to the FIR filed by the police, Abu Saeed did not die from police gunfire, but from bricks thrown by protesters. This statement sparked controversy, as eyewitnesses and various video footage had alleged that he was killed by police gunfire. July 27, 2024. On this day, the Dhaka Metropolitan Police's Detective Branch, DB, took two more coordinators of the Quota Reform Movement platform anti-discrimination student movement into custody. Sarja Salam and Hasnat Abdullah were brought to the DB office for questioning. The DB stated that they were taken into custody to gather information about recent incidents and to ensure their personal safety. Previously, the other three coordinators, Asif Mahmood, Abu Bakar Majumdar, and Nahid Islam, were already in DB custody. The Dhaka Metropolitan Police's Detective Branch, DB, took two more coordinators of the Quota Reform platform anti-discrimination student movement into custody that day. Sarja Salam and Hasnat Abdullah were brought to the DB office for questioning. The DB said they were taken into custody to learn about recent incidents and to ensure their personal safety. Earlier, the other three coordinators, Asif Mahmood, Abu Bakar Majumdar, and Nahid Islam, were already in DB custody. With these arrests, a total of 9,121 people had been detained nationwide over the past 11 days, of whom 2,536 were arrested in the capital alone. Block raids, or sudden combined operations, continued in various areas to catch protesting students. International human rights organizations expressed deep concern about these mass arrests and the detention of student leaders. In a separate incident, 17-year-old Hasnatul Islam Faiz was brought to court bound with rope in a vandalism case related to the national cricket team's jersey. He was remanded for 7 days. This treatment sparked widespread criticism on social media. Prime Minister's hospital visit and remarks to see the injured. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited Dhaka's National Orthopedic Hospital and Rehabilitation Institute, Panga Hospital. Facing criticism, during this visit, she blamed the BNP and Jamaat Shibur for the violence. Sheikh Hasina said, "This destruction has been carried out to cripple the country's economy." She added that those responsible for the violence must be punished so that no one can play with the lives of the nation's people in the future. Due to the nationwide internet shutdown, daily life faced severe disruption. On this matter, Post, Telecommunications and Information Technology State Minister Junaid Ahmed Polak stated at an event, "The government did not shut down the internet. The internet has stopped." He further claimed that the disruption occurred because of the unstable situation and a fire at a data center. However, this statement was later proven to be false, and Polak admitted that the internet had indeed been shut down under the directive of then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. International pressure amid the ongoing situation in Bangladesh. The diplomatic missions of 14 Western countries based in Dhaka issued a joint letter. The letter called for accountability for any wrongful actions by law enforcement agencies. The countries involved included the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and several European Union member states. They urged the government to find a sustainable solution to the crisis. July 28, 2024. Early in the day, one of the key coordinators of the Quota Reform Movement, Nusrat Thabassum, was taken into custody by the Detective Branch, DB, of the Dhaka Metropolitan Police, DMP, from a relative's residence in Mirpur, Dhaka. Prior to her detention, 5 other coordinators, Nahid Islam, Abu Bakar Majumdar, Asif Mahmood, Sarji Salam, and Hasnat Abdullah, were already under DB custody. As the entire nation waited to see the next course of action from the movement, around 9 p.m., a video message was sent to the media from the DB office. In the video, the 6 coordinators, who were in DB custody, were seen reading out a written statement announcing the withdrawal of all protest programs. Shortly before this announcement, photos and videos surfaced on social media, showing the 6 coordinators dining at the same table with DB chief Haruna Rashid, sparking widespread criticism and controversy across the country. Doubt and counter-statement. The video message released from the DB office immediately triggered a storm of suspicion and protest. The other 3 coordinators of the movement who were still outside, Mahin Sarkar, Abdul Qadir, and Abdul Hanan Masood, reacted promptly, stating that the video did not represent the true position of the movement. They alleged the 6 coordinators were forced to read the statement at gunpoint inside the DB office. The DB office is not a place for students to hold a press conference. According to them, the coordinators were held hostage and coerced into delivering that message. Despite the official announcement in the video, the 3 remaining coordinators declared that the movement would continue. Later, after the detained coordinators were released, it was revealed that they had indeed been compelled to deliver the statement against their will. Prime Minister's meeting and the official death toll announcement on this day. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina met with the families of 34 people, including Abu Saeed, a student killed during the quota reform movement, at the Ganababan, the Prime Minister's official residence. She expressed condolences and provided financial assistance to the families. With tearful eyes, the Prime Minister comforted them, saying, "Look at me. I have been living with immense pain. I can feel your grief." However, it was later revealed that the families had been brought to Ganababan under pressure. The Prime Minister also visited the Rajarbag Police Hospital to meet injured police officers. On the same day, for the first time, the government officially announced the death toll from the violence surrounding the movement. Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan Kamal stated that 147 people had been killed in the unrest nationwide. However, according to reports from various news outlets at the time, the actual number of deaths exceeded 200. Nationwide crackdown and internet situation on July 28th, police operations and mass arrests continued across the country. In Dhaka alone, more than 200 cases were filed, accusing over 213,000 people. Thousands of students were reportedly arrested, while many others faced threats and intimidation from law enforcement agencies. Meanwhile, after 10 consecutive days of shutdown, mobile internet services were partially restored from 3 p.m. that day. However, popular social media platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and TikTok remained blocked. According to the government, these platforms were restricted because they had been allegedly used to spread provocative and violent content during the unrest. The authorities also stated that they had demanded explanations from the companies about their roles in spreading such materials. July 29, 2024, at an important meeting of the 14-party alliance led by the Awami League, a unanimous decision was made to ban the politics of Jamaat-e-Islami and its student wing, Islami Chhatra Shirbur. The meeting was held at the Prime Minister's official residence, Gono Baban, with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in the chair. After the meeting, Awami League General Secretary Obaidul Qadir told reporters, "The BNP Jamaat alliance is conspiring to destabilize the country through anarchy. In the interest of the nation, the 14-party alliance has unanimously decided to ban Jamaat Shirbur politics to eliminate anti-state forces." He also stated that the Prime Minister has instructed the Home Ministry and the Law Ministry to take necessary steps to implement this decision. Leaders of the allied parties present at the meeting also strongly supported the move to ban Jamaat Shirbur. Meanwhile, in protest against the detention of 6 coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement by the Detective Branch, DB, and demanding their release, students held nationwide demonstrations. Widespread clashes broke out between police and students in several parts of the country, including the capital, Dhaka. To disperse the protesters, police used tear gas shells and sound grenades. Although the government announced that Tuesday would be observed as a day of mourning in memory of those killed in the ongoing movement, the anti-discrimination student movement rejected the decision and instead called for an online protest, where participants posted photos with red bands painted around their faces and eyes. Coordinators in DB custody and High Court's reaction photos showing the detained coordinators being fed inside the DB office were circulated on social media, drawing the attention of the High Court. During a hearing on Monday, the court expressed strong dissatisfaction, stating, "Do not make a mockery of the nation." The court remarked that publishing photos of the detainees being served food inside the DB office was an insult to the nation. Two Supreme Court lawyers filed a writ petition seeking the release of the 6 detained coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement from DB custody and demanding a ban on the use of live ammunition against protesters. Teachers' solidarity across the country. University teachers across Bangladesh also expressed solidarity with the students' movement. Under the banner, Teachers Against Repression, they demanded an end to student harassment and mass arrests. At a rally held in front of Aprigio Bangla at Dhaka University, they observed 1 minute of silence in memory of the students killed during the recent quota reform movement, describing the incident as the July Massacre. "This blood-soaked slaughterhouse is not my country." Professor Muhammad Gholam Rabbani, from the Department of History at Jangarnagar University, made this statement on July 29th during a rally held after a protest on the JU campus. "In this independent Bangladesh, as a teacher, I demand justice for my students who have been killed. The students who have been abducted or taken away by the police across the country, I want them back. My students who can no longer sleep peacefully at home, I want an environment where they can sleep safely again. I want the safety of my students. I want them returned to their families. I call for the reopening of my educational institution. I want to return to my classroom with my students. Today, I want to deliver a message to those teachers, parents, and professionals who still remain silent, who stay behind closed doors. I have a message for them. I will not call it my own words. Rather, I will share a few lines from the poet Nubrun Bhattacharya's poem, which you all know well. The father who is afraid to identify his child's body. I despise him. The brother who still lives shamelessly, as if nothing has happened. I despise him. The teacher, the intellectual, the poet, and the clerk, who do not demand justice for these murders in the open streets. I despise them. This valley of death is not my country. This stage of the executioners' celebration is not my country. This vast cremation ground is not my country. This blood-soaked slaughterhouse is not my country. Thank you, everyone." July 30th, 2024. Although the government declared July 30th as a national day of mourning in memory of those killed in the clashes, the students rejected the announcement. Instead, the anti-discrimination student movement called on people to observe the day in their own way. Responding to this call, millions across the country changed their profile pictures on social media, especially on Facebook, to frames colored in red. The color red became a powerful symbol of protest, grief, and the demand for justice. Many also tied red cloths around their faces and eyes and posted photos online to show solidarity. This unique form of protest quickly spilled beyond the virtual world and ignited the streets across the nation. United Nations expresses concern and calls for transparent investigation. The international community also raised its voice over the violence and loss of life surrounding the quota reform movement. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres issued a statement expressing deep concern and alarm over reports of excessive use of force against protesters. He called for a prompt, transparent, and impartial investigation into the incidents and emphasized the need to hold those responsible accountable. Meanwhile, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk urged law enforcement agencies to act in accordance with international human rights standards. March for Justice program announced on the same day, the anti-discrimination student movement announced its next program, demanding justice for those killed, an investigation under the supervision of the United Nations, and several other related demands. The movement declared that a nationwide March for Justice would be held on July 31st. The announcement also called upon students, teachers, lawyers, human rights activists, and people from all walks of life to join and participate in this movement. United protest by students, teachers, and parents. The July 30th protests were not limited to students alone. At Jangarnagar University, students and teachers held a silent march, even in the face of police obstruction. Teachers from Dhaka University and several other universities also organized gatherings, expressing solidarity with the students' demands and condemning the repression and violence against them. At the same time, parents who had lost their children in the movement took to the streets, demanding justice. Prominent citizens and intellectuals of the country also issued statements holding the government responsible for the loss of lives and calling for accountability for the casualties. Government reaction and Prime Minister's statement amid growing public pressure. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina announced that the government was ready to seek foreign assistance for a judicial investigation into the incidents. Meanwhile, 6 organizers of the quota reform movement remained in the custody of the detective branch, DB. In protest, HSC examinees warned that they would boycott their examinations if their detained fellow students were not released. July 31, 2024 on Wednesday, July 31, 2024, the March for Justice program was observed across Bangladesh in protest of the violence, killings, mass arrests, and abductions that took place during the quota reform movement. Responding to the call of the anti-discrimination student movement, students across the country turned court premises, university campuses, and streets into centers of protest. From early morning, students began gathering in major cities. In the capital, Dhaka, around 1:15 p.m., students from BUET, Dhaka University, and several other institutions marched toward the High Court. They were stopped near the Bangladesh Shirshu Academy by police, who detained several students. In response, the protesters took position at Dole Chuttur, where elitaire teachers from Dhaka University's White Panel joined them in solidarity. After about 3 hours of demonstrations, the Dhaka program concluded around 3 p.m. Similarly, in the port city of Chattogram, students began gathering around the court building premises from 11 a.m. Despite police obstruction, nearly 200 students held their ground there. About 50 to 60 pro-BNP lawyers expressed solidarity with the student movement, while pro-Awami League lawyers organized a counter-rally, creating brief tension in the area. After about 3 hours, the Chattogram event concluded around 3:15 p.m. with a peaceful march up to the New Market intersection. In the education hub of Rajshahi, the program had a significant impact as well. Students of Rajshahi University blocked the Dhaka-Rajshahi highway at 12:20 p.m. and continued the blockade for about an hour, during which 5 students were arrested by police. Meanwhile, at Shah Jalal University of Science and Technology, SUSD, and other educational institutions in Sylhet, students began marching from the university gate toward Court Point at 11:20 a.m., joining the nationwide March for Justice movement. 9-point demands and announcement of a new program. The March for Justice program was primarily organized to press for 9 specific demands of the students. These demands included justice for the killings, an end to mass arrests, withdrawal of attacks and legal cases against students, and ensuring the safety and security of students. At the conclusion of the day's events, the anti-discrimination student movement announced a new program for the following day called Remembering Our Heroes. The purpose of this program was to commemorate the students who were killed or injured during the movement. One of the movement's coordinators, Rafat Rashid, stated in a press release, "This program has been announced to protest the mass killings, mass arrests, attacks, legal cases, abductions, and assaults on teachers carried out against students, and to further the fulfillment of the 9-point demands of the anti-discrimination student movement. Call for international investigation and government response. The violence and loss of life during the movement also drew concern at the international level. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stated that the government has no objection to seeking assistance from international organizations for investigating the ongoing movement. In response, the United Nations expressed interest in sending a fact-finding team. During a briefing, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric, said, "Whenever a government requests assistance in an investigation, we are always ready to provide it." Social media restored an HSC exam boycott announced. Meanwhile, after being shut down for 13 days, Facebook, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms were reopened at 3 p.m. The internet blackout had disrupted the flow of information about the movement and the overall situation in the country, and reopening these platforms helped restore some normalcy. At the same time, hundreds of HSC examinees announced a boycott of their exams until all detained students are released. The students stated that they cannot participate in exams while their fellow classmates remain in jail. Throughout the day, reports emerged of clashes between students and police in various parts of the country. To suppress the movement, The police used tear gas, sound grenades, and baton charges. At the Dhaka High Court premises, a group of teachers and lawyers from different universities across the country held a solidarity sit-in in support of the protesters. On July 31, 2024, at 11 a.m., Professor Salamullah Khan delivered a speech at a rally held in front of the gate of the University of Liberal Arts Bangladesh, ULAB. It is being said that the student movement is apolitical. But the question of whether everyone will have the right to compete fairly for government jobs in the country is not apolitical. It is a political question. Instead of addressing this political question through political solutions, the government initially tried to ignore the movement. Later, it adopted a repressive policy using its paid-for forces, and it was from this approach that the killings began. We want to make it clear. These killings occurred with state support, by state forces, and in coordination with state-backed groups, which we can term private forces. In the current situation, a credible international law investigation is necessary. On behalf of the nation's killed, injured, abducted, and persecuted citizens, we fully support this demand. The government is still attempting to deny these killings. Yesterday, under the name of a mourning day, the cabinet secretary issued a notification instructing people to wear a black badge in memory of the killed and injured. We rejected that and instead wore red badges. The government refuses to call the deceased martyrs. If they are not martyrs, but only victims, then what is the need to pray for them? The government is now using the excuse that attacks on places like metro rail stations, bridge buildings, or the Bangladesh television building justify these killings. Our expert analysts, such as Brigadier General Sakhavat Hossain, have clarified that these are key point installations, KPIs. The government either failed to take prior precautions to protect them or is responsible for the damage caused due to insufficient measures. Where the shootings took place, for example, Abu said in Rangpur, who was killed, what KPI was attacked there? The highest levels of the government still claim that political opponents entered this movement to destroy symbols of development. But even if we accept that argument, why did the people support it at that moment? People attacked what they perceived as a symbol of arrogance and power. Similarly, during the 1857 Sepoy Rebellion in northern India, farmers attacked Tahsil offices and set fire to official documents. Those documents symbolized the oppression and authority of the British government. If anyone attacked a metro rail station today, it was similarly a symbolic attack. The government has failed to understand this perspective. The government is now saying that it will ban this group or that group. But this will not solve the core problem. Instead, it will worsen it and create a cancerous situation. What is needed now is a political solution. The first step toward that is for the current government to unconditionally apologize and resign. Without this resignation, we cannot accept any new measures. We are standing here not only for the forgiveness of the souls of those who were killed, but also for the forgiveness for those who are still alive. Our concept of forgiveness is asking Allah for pardon. We demand justice for those who were killed, injured, persecuted, currently oppressed, or in hiding. This justice will only be possible when the entire nation rises in solidarity with them. It is being said that this is only a student youth movement, but in reality, it is becoming a nationwide movement. The movement has not stopped, and it will not stop. Today, we stand as teachers, but beyond our role as educators, we have a social responsibility. After all, we are voters too. We used to think that students of private universities are like farm chickens, they don't engage in politics. But today, we were surprised to see that due to attacks by state forces on public university students, ordinary students awoke to political consciousness. The state apparatus was deployed against them, and that's when the movement spread across the entire country. Today's killings are more tragic than the 1952 language movement or the 1969 mass uprising. Yet, from this tragedy, a national movement has emerged. We must repeat the old truth. To emerge from this darkness, we must wait and persevere. I do not believe in rapid progress. Looking at the history of humankind, one may question whether we have become more civilized, compassionate, or loving. I have my doubts. Yet, despite that, we must stand firm for your present, not just for your future. Yes, those who were killed by bullets are our guides. Many among us might also die, and some of us may be arrested. We must keep that in mind. Today's assembly is small, but it is a rally of solidarity. We are part of a massive movement, but we did not come here to drift away. As intellectuals, we need self-criticism and a thorough explanation of this problem. July 32, 2024. One of the most significant events on August 1st, 2024, was the release of 6 coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement who had been in the custody of the detective branch, DB. Around 1:30 p.m., they left the DB office in a black vehicle. While their release brought some relief among the student protesters, concerns about the future of the movement remained. This was because, on the same day, incidents of clashes and bloodshed occurred in various parts of the country, particularly in Kumala, Narayanganj, and Barisal, complicating the situation further. In memory of those killed, the protesters organized a program titled Remembering Our Heroes. Teachers and students from 5 public universities across the country also participated in the rallies, highlighting that student unrest was still intense. Ban on Jamit Shibur and government's firm stand. Another major development of the day was the government's issuance of a notification banning Jamit Islami, Islami Chhatra Shibur, and their affiliated organizations. This ban was imposed under the Anti-Terrorism Act and was presented as a response to terrorist activities that occurred during the quota reform movement. Law Minister Anisul Haq stated, Jamit Islami, Islami Chhatra Shibur, and all their affiliated organizations can no longer engage in politics under these names. When questioned about the future of the leaders and members of these organizations, the minister clarified that not everyone would be prosecuted en masse, but those involved in criminal activities would be brought under the law. International response and government reaction. The international community was closely monitoring the unrest in the country. The United Nations proposed sending an independent fact-finding team to investigate the violence. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina welcomed this proposal. Overall, August 1st, 2024, was a day of multifaceted developments. On one hand, the release of the coordinators brought hope, while on the other hand, the new bans and ongoing clashes added further complexity to the situation. July 33, 2024 attacks, clashes, and loss of life on the call of the anti-discrimination student movement, a prayer and mass student people rally, was held nationwide after Friday prayers. The program received widespread participation in districts including Bogra. Students, teachers, parents, and ordinary citizens joined the rallies despite rain, blocking roads at various locations. Their demands included justice for those killed in the recent movement, release of the detained, and the resignation of the government. Teachers and civil society's procession of defiance and artist solidarity. Members of the teacher and civil society also took to the streets in a procession of defiance. In human chains and rallies held at multiple locations, speakers emphasized that fear had been created in society, yet the students overcame that fear and took to the streets. Artists and cultural workers declared solidarity with the movement, organizing poetry recitations, songs, and performances, creating a unique form of protest that engaged people from all walks of life. The day's activities did not end peacefully. Across the country, including in Dhaka, there were attacks on mass rallies and clashes with police. Reports indicated that at least 2 people, including a police officer, were killed and hundreds were injured. In major cities like Chittagong, protesters clashed with the police, and a police box was set on fire. Call for nationwide non-cooperation and Facebook shutdown. Protesters announced that they would continue their movement against the killings and called for a nationwide general strike starting August 4th. In response, the government took strict measures to control the situation, including blocking Facebook for nearly 7 hours starting Friday afternoon. Statement by DB detained coordinators. On the same day, the 6 coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement who had been released from DB custody issued a joint statement asserting that they had not voluntarily recorded any video retracting the movement. In their statement, Nahid Islam, Sarjiz Alam, Hasnat Abdullah, Asif Mahmood, Abu Bakr Mazumdar, and Nusrat Thabassum said they had been coerced into making such statements at the DB office. They reaffirmed their commitment to continue the movement, demanding justice for student and citizen killings and the release of detainees. Bail for 78 HSC examinees. 78 HSC examinees, who had been arrested in connection with the ongoing violence and vandalism, were granted bail by various courts across the country on Friday. This information was confirmed by the Ministry of Education's public relations officer. UNICEF's concern over child deaths. UNICEF expressed deep concern over the deaths of at least 32 children during the July quota reform movement. In a statement released on Friday, Sanjay Wijesekera, regional director for South Asia, called for ensuring child protection and reopening schools quickly to restore normalcy. He stated, "When children speak out, they must be protected." Rejection of Prime Minister's invitation for dialogue. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina invited the movement leaders to Ghana for discussions, stating that her door was open for dialogue. However, the leaders of the anti-discrimination student movement rejected the invitation. July 34, 2024. On August 3, 2024, thousands of students and ordinary citizens took to the streets across the country, including the capital Dhaka, demanding the resignation of the government. On the call of the anti-discrimination student movement, protest rallies were held in more than 33 districts and major cities nationwide. The central hub of the movement was the central Shahid Minar in Dhaka, where demonstrators gathered to voice their demands. Nationwide violence and casualties. Announcement of the One Demand protest from a massive gathering at the central Shahid Minar. Nahid Islam, a coordinator of the anti-discrimination student movement, announced the movement's One Demand: the resignation of the government. He stated, "Our movement has been peaceful and will remain peaceful." With this announcement, the quota reform movement transformed into a nationwide popular movement. Although Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina invited the protesting students to Ghana for dialogue, the movement leaders rejected the offer. They remained steadfast in demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister and the formation of a national government. Nahid Islam declared that they had no plans to negotiate with the government. Although the movement began peacefully, violence spread across various parts of the country. Clashes occurred between protesters, police, and ruling party activists in more than a dozen districts, including Chittagong, Bogara, Magura, Rangpur, Kisharganj, and Sirajanj. Chittagong. There were attacks on the residence of Education Minister Mohibul Hassan Chowdhury, and 2 vehicles were set on fire. Additionally, the office of Chittagong, 10 MP Mohuddin Bakshu was attacked and torched. Bogara, a nearly 2-hour-long clash between protesting students and police, turned the area into a battlefield. Police used tear gas shells, sound grenades, rubber bullets, and shotgun fire. Kumala, allegedly activists of Chhatra League, Jubo League, and Volunteer League attacked student protesters and fired shots, injuring numerous students. Sirajanj, when protesters attacked a local police station, 18 people were reported dead, including 13 police officers. Rangpur, following the death of Abu Saeed, a student of Begum Rokeya University and a key coordinator of the quota reform movement, 2 police officers were temporarily suspended. According to human rights organizations, hundreds of people were killed and thousands injured during the movement from July to August. The Human Rights Support Society, HRSS, reported that from July 16 to August 3, 327 people lost their lives, most due to gunfire. Government response. In response to the intensity of the protests, the government issued several statements. Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan Kamal stated that the Prime Minister would resign if she wished. He also said the students' movement is no longer apolitical, and in case of attacks, self-defense measures would be taken. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina labeled the protesters as saboteurs and criminals, claiming harsh measures should be taken against them. She also alleged that the protests were orchestrated by the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, and Jamaat-e-Islami. Despite these measures, the movement could not be stopped. On August 4, the protesters called for a nationwide general strike, urging all government and private institutions, offices, courts, factories, and educational institutions to remain closed. Role of the artistic community in the movement against the government's discriminatory quota reform policy quickly evolved into a nationwide uprising against authoritarianism. In this wave of social and political change, the artistic community played a courageous and crucial role. Through music, poetry, murals, and performances, artists gave a new voice to the protest, inspiring and energizing ordinary citizens. Their active participation added a new dimension to the movement, even putting many of them in the crosshairs of the government, with some facing arrests. Every mass movement carries a protest song. From the language movement of 1952 to the Liberation War of 1971, music has always awakened the collective consciousness of the people in Bangladesh. The 2024 mass uprising was no exception. In this movement, Bangla rap music had the greatest impact, expressing the youth's voice of resistance directly and powerfully. Awaz Utha, Hanan. The rap song, Awaz Utha, by rapper Hanan is widely regarded as the anthem of the revolution. Released on July 18th, the song boldly challenged the then authoritarian government. Its lyrics referenced the bloodshed on the streets and the order to shoot Abu Saeed, reflecting the brutal reality faced by protesters. Performing this song put Hanan at risk. He was imprisoned for 12 days. Reports indicate that he was detained without any formal charges, highlighting the government's attempt to suppress artistic and political expression. Kota K. Shazan. Rapper Shazan's Kota K became one of the key anthems of the July uprising. Immediately after its release, the song spread like wildfire among the youth. It highlighted the courage of Abu Saeed, a student killed during police attacks in Rangpur, and directly challenged the government's oppression. Lines like, Amar Manchitra Kanda Aj Dika Desher Hal Ri, Lal Shobajar Pataka Ma Puradai Deki Lal Ri, brought the blood-soaked reality of the nation into public consciousness. Other notable songs, Boi Banglui and Ami I Bangladesh, Sayan. These songs by artist and activist Farzana Wahid Sayan had long been recognized as voices of protest. During the uprising, they particularly inspired the movement's participants. Shono Mohajan, Shuno Band. This track became a revolutionary anthem for Generation Z, resonating deeply with young protesters. Timeless protest songs. Classics like Qazi Nazrul Islam's Karar Oy Kopat and Dwijendralal Roy's Iman Desh Taik Kotheo Kuj Pabe Nako Tumi were revived in the voices of the people, connecting past struggles with contemporary resistance. In total, over 40 Bangla rap songs played significant roles in the movement. These tracks were more than entertainment. They became powerful instruments of political solidarity. Various cultural organizations, such as Shamgeet and Niparambarodi Shilpi Sango, actively participated by organizing protest marches and rallies. Repression and support. Thousands of students and citizens, including artists, writers, and cultural workers, were arbitrarily arrested for their involvement in the uprising. According to Amnesty International, over 10,000 protesters were detained in July alone. Many artists, often anonymously, arranged medical care for the injured and raised funds for the movement. Doctors risked their own safety to treat the wounded, sometimes using false names on medical records to protect identities. July 35, 2024. On Sunday, August 4, 2024, Bangladesh witnessed one of the most violent and unprecedented days in its recent history. On August 2nd, Abdul Hanan, one of the coordinators of the anti-discrimination student movement, had appeared on Facebook Live, calling for nationwide protest marches and announcing a general strike, Sarbadamak Asahag movement, starting from August 4th. Responding to this call, students and the general public took to the streets, while the ruling Awami League also declared its intention to mobilize supporters, further escalating the situation. Nationwide clashes across the country, particularly in Dhaka, Sirajanj, Feni, Munshiganj, Bogara, and Rangpur, violent clashes broke out in at East 21 districts. The confrontations began when protesters blocked major highways. Police stations and offices of the Awami League also became targets for the protesters. Mass casualties and fatalities on the first day of the general strike. Unprecedented violence engulfed the nation. According to various media reports, between 90 and 114 people were killed that day. Among the dead in Sirajanj, 13 police officers and 19 leaders and activists of Awami League and its affiliated organizations died due to mob violence. Hundreds more were injured across the country. Notable incidents: Sirajanj, 18 people died in clashes at Inayetpur police station, including 13 police officers. Dhaka, at least 13 people, including students, were killed in areas such as Dhanmondi, Gulistan, and Farmgate. Feni, 5 people died in clashes involving protesters and members of Chhatra League, Jubo League, and Awami League. Narsingdi, 6 Awami League leaders were reportedly beaten to death near Midhabdi Municipal Building. Other districts. Fatalities were also reported in Munshiganj, Rungpur, Magura, Bola, Pabna, Sylhet, Kumala, Joypurhat, and Barisal. Government response. Following the widespread violence, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina addressed the nation, condemning the protesting students and declaring, "Those who are causing destruction now are not students. They are terrorists. I call upon the people of the country to suppress these terrorists with full force." To control the situation, the government imposed a nationwide indefinite curfew from 6 p.m. and suspended internet services. Additionally, August 5th, 6th, and 7 were declared public holidays across the country. This day marked a turning point in the 2024 anti-discrimination student movement, highlighting both the intensity of the protests and the government's readiness to use extreme measures to suppress dissent. Announcement of March to Dhaka. Amid widespread repression and fatalities, the anti-discrimination student movement did not retreat from its stance. On the afternoon of August 4th, 2024, one of the movement's coordinators, Nahid Islam, announced a new program called March to Dhaka as part of the ongoing general strike, Asahag movement. Initially, the march was planned for August 6th, but due to the rapidly changing situation, it was rescheduled to August 5th. The movement called on students, citizens, and workers from across the country to gather in Dhaka under the slogan, "Power must be relinquished. Come to Dhaka, people." This announcement signaled a nationwide mobilization, emphasizing the movement's resolve to escalate protests despite government crackdowns and violence. Decision of the armed forces' role of the military in preventing escalation as the spontaneous student-citizen movement approached a critical point of confrontation. Timely decisions by the military prevented the country from sliding into a catastrophic civil war. On August 3rd and 4th, 2024, the military stance became clear. On August 3rd, Army Chief General Wakar convened a crucial meeting with senior military officers. In this meeting, he explicitly stated that the army would not fire on civilians and would not participate in any killings. Meanwhile, former Army Chief General Iqbal Karim Bia publicly called for a military withdrawal and strongly condemned the killings, further encouraging peaceful resolution. This decision boosted the morale of the protesters and provided new impetus to the movement. On August 4th, a group of retired military officers held a press conference expressing solidarity with the demands of the student-citizen movement and urged the active duty forces to return to their barracks. This had a positive impact on active military personnel and exerted significant pressure on the government. In Dhaka on these days, the military was observed standing alongside the students, refusing to act against them even when faced with provocations from Awami League supporters and police, effectively preventing further bloodshed. July 36, 2024 Monday, August 5, 2024, will be remembered as an unprecedented and historic day in Bangladesh's political history. The students themselves marked this day in their own calendar as 36 July. The quota reform movement, which began in July, had by now evolved into a nationwide uprising demanding the resignation of the government. Despite the curfew imposed after the brutal violence on Sunday, the anti-discrimination student movement called for the Dhaka Cholo, March to Dhaka, program on Monday. Responding to this call, thousands of students and citizens from across the country set out for Dhaka. From early morning, the military made initial attempts to stop the crowds heading toward the capital, but eventually, they did not prevent entry. By 10 a.m., people began entering Dhaka through Uttara in massive numbers. Although there were incidents of combined attacks by police and Awami League activists and some gunfire at different locations, the flow of people could not be stopped. Thousands of citizens defied the curfew to gather in the heart of the capital, signaling the escalation of the movement into a full-scale national uprising. Resignation and flight of Sheikh Hasina facing massive nationwide protests. Sheikh Hasina resigned around noon on August 5, 2024. At approximately 2:30 p.m., she left Ganababin in a military helicopter accompanied by her sister, Sheikh Rahana. Later, multiple international media outlets confirmed that she fled to India in a military aircraft. Before leaving the country, she was not given the opportunity to address the nation. In the afternoon, Army Chief General Wakar addressed the nation, confirming Sheikh Hasina's resignation and announcing the formation of an interim government. In his speech, he stated, "We will form an interim government. The country has been severely affected. The economy has suffered. Many lives have been lost. Now it is time to stop the violence." He also assured that all killings and injustices would be investigated, signaling a temporary restoration of order and the start of a transitional administration. As news of Sheikh Hasina's departure spread, jubilant crowds took to the streets of Dhaka. Thousands of people stormed the Prime Minister's official residence, Ganababan, and the Parliament building. Extensive looting and destruction occurred inside Ganababan, with valuable items ransacked. Protesters attacked the Bangabandhu Memorial Museum at 32 Dhanmondi, setting it on fire. They also targeted the Awami League Central Office, the party chairman's political office, and the Home Minister's residence, causing significant damage and arson. The statue of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman at Bijoy Sarani was vandalized. Across the country, millions of people celebrated in the streets. In the evening, President Mohammed Sabuddin met at Bangabandhu with leaders of the BNP, Jamaat-e-Islami, and other political parties, assuring them that an interim government would be formed as soon as possible. Casualties and historical reflection of the July-August uprising. There are discrepancies among sources regarding the number of people killed during the July-August uprising, but estimates suggest it may exceed 1,500, with approximately 72% under the age of 30. At least 30,000 people were injured. The sacrifices of so many young lives paved the way for a country free from autocracy. History shows that during such mass uprisings, there is often a golden opportunity to reform state structures. Yet if a nation fails to seize that opportunity, it repeatedly pays the price in blood against oppression. Unfortunately, while we read history, we often fail to learn from it. If the outcomes of this student-led mass uprising are not realized and delivered to the youth themselves, history is doomed to repeat itself, and countless young lives will continue to be lost.